fuck hashtags. I'm bringing back pound sign. Start calling it pound sign fucking dope shit. Pound sign.
Pound sign, bring back the pound sign.
Other people can invite people to this chat, right? Like, I'm not the only one with permissions.
Oh, yeah, you can start. I think so.
Yeah, so if you know anybody
So
who
am
might
I
be-
looking for at 420 with the two hands
No,
pointing up?
you want the one that shows a mic over top of a table if you're going to YouTube.
Yeah, and I'm looking for
So you're using Facebook Messenger for this?
I'm using Facebook Messenger, so if you've got friends you want to invite that ask questions or comment on the chat, then we can read it through the Facebook Messenger.
There's a few members.
Mm-hmm.
So, channel.
Something went wrong.
Did it just say that?
Yeah, I know. I'm still on the chat, so it's all good.
Live now. Excellent.
I got that too. We are live on YouTube. Oh my god.
All right.
Where does it say that?
I'm about to
Oh,
post
my
the
phone
link.
just told me.
I'm about to post the link in the chat, actually, people. Give me 1 second. I just got to go to YouTube. I'm actually subscribed to Studio 420. Weird. You know, subscribe to my own podcast site or the one I operate on.
I don't
groups.
believe in subscribing to my own podcast. I just like to do it once and then go drink some whiskey later. And usually it's like 1:30 in the afternoon. No, I'm only lying. I save my drink until 3.
It's like, do you always like your own posts on Facebook? You're the first person.
No, that's a pet peeve of mine, actually. People who like their own posts on Facebook. Like, what does it accomplish?
I believe in grade 3 I was part of the class vote for president, and I didn't vote for myself, which led to me losing
Oh.
by 1 vote.
Oh.
Wow. Trump voted for himself.
Shit. Yeah.
Oh,
I would have voted for Ralph Nader, just like Fat Mike did in that No Effects song.
okay. What the fuck? I got people. Everybody's messaging me in the live chat already, so I'm having a hard time picking up the.
I'm trying to figure out how to share this. I think I got it figured out, though.
I'm about to copy the link and then put it into the chat so people can share.
Well, I actually subscribe to Studio 420, which you should all do who are watching this right now on your computer machine. You should probably subscribe to Studio 420 on YouTube, but you can actually share it. It will send you notifications whenever we decide to go live.
Theoretically.
Exactly.
Jake can't.
You know, I just don't understand.
We haven't even really
technology.
started the podcast. I'm just
Share.
posting the thing. People are already starting to chat in the chat.
I'm
Perfect.
already I'm struggling to connect onto the YouTube stream here.
It could be taking a minute. Are you on Are you on the Wi-Fi for the studio?
Oh, I'm not.
You should join the studio Wi-Fi. You can just take your headset off and grab. It's right.
Yeah, the
behind you,
Wi-Fi
actually. There's
password's
one
like right there.
Yeah, there's one right there. My headphones on. Okay.
What are we giving away today? I'm just posting it on my
I
Facebook.
have Kaitami tickets. I have a set of Kaitami tickets to give away at the end of this podcast.
Decent.
We're partway through for the show tonight. That door is at 7. Show goes till 10:30. Stage is, I do believe, at 8. Right, and we will have the dab bar and everything. I'm just pulling it up right now. I've got the. Are you listening to the podcast right now? Turn your volume down so it doesn't. We don't. You don't actually get to listen to the podcast while you're on the podcast.
I'm just curious.
How do we spell
right now.
Kitami? I just want to make sure I'm spelling it correctly.
We can grab one of those centers things from over on the unit there.
Oh yeah.
All right, we will start off with a round of dabs. So we were talking. I'm just making sure we're actually still going through here as it pulls up. So we were talking about. No, we got people filming up in Harewood. Okay, yeah, there we go. Now we're on the stream. I've got your foot jiggling from a minute or two ago. This is good. Okay, I'm going to go back to the chat so we can include the people in there. The stream is going correctly. Somebody messaged me in the chat if things shit the bed on me. We were over at the dab bar earlier, and we were just bullshitting about DMT and who's done DMT and the effects they've had from DMT, right? So today we are here with Matt, and then we are here with Patrick, and we are here with, oh my God, I just put his fucking name, Keenan.
There you go.
Keenan.
I cheated.
No, I didn't look. I didn't. It says Kat and it says Ray. Other people are getting invited to this, right? I linked the chat link in there. So who here has all done DMT? Let's do a show of hands for the camera.
Hello, everybody. This is Matt, and yes, I have done DMT before.
Okay. How recently have you done DMT, Matt?
I did DMT 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
No, 4 years ago. I
okay.
ingested it though.
You ate it.
I ate it with a First Nation shaman at a
Oh,
protest.
I think you mean Aboriginal.
Yeah.
Indigenous? They keep changing the word. Fuck. Okay, and Keenan, when was the last time you did DMT?
Probably about the same period of time,
Oh,
5 to 6 years. Yeah,
And how did you do it?
I smoked it.
You smoked it. Weren't you the one saying you did it through a gravity bong?
Yes.
Yeah,
When
Oh,
I
wow.
had my breakthrough, I smoked it through a gravity bong.
Nice.
Yes.
I like the double play on words, just the gravity of the situation.
Oh,
It was important. Gravity
there
bong.
was a
that
heavy
shit.
weight on me for
Oh,
sure.
no doubt. Okay, and then Patrick.
About 2 years ago, 2 summers ago, on a travel through Canada.
Oh, okay.
It was brought up to me, and I accepted the offer and
Did you smoke it or do you ingest it?
we smoked it through a bong.
Okay.
I actually spent about 6 minutes beforehand just looking through a kaleidoscope and inducing optical impression beforehand, and just really enjoying. The
So you tried to guide your trip a little
Well, a
bit?
sensory, suggestion, and just where your body's at in that level of I guess.
Try and get
you-
yourself into the right frame of mind before you send yourself into the
Yeah,
cosmos.
your body works on so many levels that you're not even aware of that. But in those states, you're really introduced to.
I think I've been the one it's been the longest since I did DMT. I'm 33. I haven't done it since I was like 20, and I used to sell rave drugs, but I used to do it 2 or 3 times a day for a really long time. They're smoking it right now. There's a big difference between when you smoke DMT and when you ingest DMT.
Absolutely.
You need HMO inhibitors in your DMT when you go to ingest it, and it spreads the high out over many hours, so you don't end up, as Keenan had put it, breaking through. If you want to picture what breaking through is like, just imagine the intro to Star Trek, but rather than the USS Enterprise, it's just your spirit going where no man has gone before.
Well, it's interesting because I've only tried DMT once, and it was that one time I ingested it. And when I tell people the story, most people I've spoken to smoked it.
Yeah.
And apparently it only lasts, correct me if I'm wrong, only 50, although it seems probably a lot longer, but it only lasts about like 10, 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
I've timed it.
I'd say like 20 minutes, and then after that period of time, you're
The
completely sober. It
afterglow,
was like
yeah.
if anything, I felt more rejuvenated afterwards. I would compare it to sleeping for 12 hours and getting up and stretching, and that feeling just after you stretch, like my body just felt like so perfect and at peace.
In your guys' opinion, is it more of a spiritual trip or more of a recreational drug trip?
I was atheist until I did DMT.
Spiritual might be the wrong word,
Right.
but more of a right?
No, I was completely atheist. I'm like, no, science. We're all gonna die. We're just the same decaying organic matter, and there's nothing beyond us. Nothing in life matters. And then I did DMT, and you start seeing spirit beings and shit like that. And like, I did so much DMT, and I didn't pay attention to the subtle messages that I ended up in the DMT hell once, which I don't have recollection of. But other people
What
are like,
in
dude,
the blue hell is that?
okay, well, because there is a multiverse, and that you can have different energy dimensions in theory. I mean, like, maybe I'm just talking out my ass.
We're going to be talking a lot in theory today.
And theory. All science is a theory, though,
thank
right?
you.
It's still the theory of gravity.
I
Jesus
100%
Christ.
agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that's not a theory is gender. There's definitely 2 of those.
well, doing dabs too.
I have
Can't
to say
forget
the
that.
level
That
of
is true.
connectivity to thought in this level, in this state, is I think the significant.
Absolutely,
aspect.
brother.
Regardless of spirituality, if it's scientific based on atheistic, views, you just have to have an idea. We base our thoughts into feelings, into action, and then I feel there's steps into consciousness as well as into physical being. So it's all mirrored or in levels meta, like they are within themselves. So the connectivity, regardless of how you design your belief system, your BS, whatever it is going to activate in physical form chemical processes, and then you relate them to feelings. I am not comfortable in this level, or I'm feeling comfortable. So we have maybe constant trips
Absolutely.
right
I
now.
I sometimes look at like kind of what we're talking about as like a television. Like you have the chips inside the television that create the beautiful picture on the screen. If you didn't know how a television worked, you might look at those chips as nothing and they don't do anything. But you put it all together and then you get this beautiful screen. So I sometimes look at like science and spirituality as the screen versus the chips that make the screen in the television. And I feel that. Sometimes it's easy to look at them separately, and when you do a psychedelic like DMT, and I'm not condoning any type of drugs or whatever. I personally, I'm a spiritual person, and I always wanted to do DMT, and I did, and I'm actually glad that I did. But it kind of opened my eyes to how it's all one and the same. It's all you have the science and you have the spirituality, and it's all connected, in my opinion, at least.
Well, I'd like to go to what Ray Gallion has said here in the group chat. He's done DMT and stuff, and he's talking about the pituitary gland and how we produce it when we sleep. And he says a lot of people have the same. Trip from it, where they feel their consciousness goes into a group consciousness, which is where it ties into Carl Jung and the collective unconscious, and how we pass knowledge on between not just generations of human beings, but quite possibly generations of intelligent beings all across the stars, right? So then he says there are arguments that we are all the same person because of that trip, because like different people will eat LSD. They'll eat the same LSD from the same batch, and then they will have different trips, right? But with DMT, people all seem to experience a lot of the similar stuff. Patrick, come get in on this. I've got a little bit of Clear holding together some WCB2, the sequel.
Ooh, very
for a big
nice.
fat dab.
For a talk on this level, you almost have to medicate, and you almost have to
Yeah.
dab.
And I'd like to go back to your question, whether it was like a spiritual or a recreational. When I was introduced to it, it was definitely a recreational aspect, and the person I was doing it with and stuff, we kind of researched it further, and the person who we were getting it from was kind of like a shaman himself, and so he would tell us about his use spiritually, and kind of enlightened me to it. So yes, definitely it was a recreational aspect, and I'd still say even after I experienced a spiritual quest or whatever you want to
Awakening?
call it. Yeah, I'd compare it to like astral projection almost, like because when I did it, I saw myself on Earth, and then I shot into space, as you said, warping through whatever to the next dimension. So
Well, there's when I did it. Now, I sold DMT, but not responsibly. I sold a lot of rave drugs, right? So there was no shaman. This is how I ended up in the DMT hell. It's when the spirits beyond realizing that you're abusing gifts that are meant to help us enlighten ourselves. Okay, so I don't lose my train of thought here on this one. Unguided DMT use can lead you some really, really bad places. It is a spiritual trip that's supposed to be in conjunction with a shaman. The thought is that it helps our Ray was pointing out that when you die, you release DMT, and it's the white light that you see. The thought is that the DMT helps your soul pass into the energy life stream, right? And then if you talk about reincarnation and religions and stuff like that, they talk about how you could get reincarnated as a fucking butterfly or whatever, and only the most high level beings come back as fucking human beings. The thought would be that your soul, your life experiences, get split up into the life stream, becoming parts of many new life forms, unless you're someone who's spent your whole life meditating like a monk or whatever, because it's thought that monks can send themselves on these astral projections without drugs. That's why so many people describe getting so close to God when they're in a DMT trip, and then right as you're about to meet God, you get drugged back, because DMT is supposed to be the clue in that there is more than you. But if you actually want to fucking attain higher levels where you bring the most information back, you need to learn how to meditate yourself there without the assistance of these.
It opened my eyes that we were all connected.
I want to bring the point up of death involved with this state and the extreme rush of sensory. It almost cuts you off at a level of bliss that, if you are in extreme pain, which some people are going through, and introduced to a DMT trip, can relieve a level of psychological association to the body that you'll always feel this pain. But when in a trip, you're allowed a sense of relief at a level of maybe related to death, and where death could lead some of our terminal patients, if introduced to DMT before their actual death.
That's a very interesting
can
point.
Introduce death as a subtle practice, like you're saying, a meditative process, but not to an adept of these indoctrinations that work religiously to induce these states, but instead we can introduce them in scientific form, a chemical. And that's really interesting, because I processed a lot of these thoughts in death and practice death. What are we losing? What are we releasing? And in these thoughts form through DMT, I was given the symbolic nature of archetypical consciousness, and what are you losing in familiar form? And you can now, let's say, political, let's say family, communal, provincial, national, global, and all the associative ties that you have are released because that last breath. And those are the things that bring to mind at death and DMT, and the associative processes that can be then now to another thing brought to clinical use.
That's a very, very interesting outlook. I really like that perspective personally. That's
It doesn't. It
seems
it
very
relates to anybody's BS
Mhm.
belief system and
Absolutely.
and indoctrinated whatever religious use, sacred, ceremonial, or recreational, because it actually is practical. We have little Buddhas running around at raves if in proper ceremonial use, and positive absorption of like the environment. You're actually attaining these things that people have practiced years and years, their whole lives, to never even attain. They never got to talk to God.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, okay, I'd like to
It's decent.
back to your thing, point about death and understanding death. There's actually research going on right now where a psychologist will feed somebody who's got a terminal illness a bunch of mushrooms, right? And they'll do this like over a couple of different sessions, and then they will help them talk to and come to terms with their death. Because if you've got a terminal, uncurable illness, right, the best thing you can do for that person is at least allow them to enjoy what time they have left on the earth. So they're finding that if you feed people mushrooms or with post-traumatic stress disorder, they feed people ecstasy, like MDMA, the actual pharmaceutical thing it was invented to do, right? And then they're able to talk about their post-traumatic stress experience
Without
with
reliving.
yeah, they have a
emotional
degree
effect.
of disassociation from it while they work through it, right? Because death freaks a lot of people out. If you look at most of our religions are based on what goes on after death. So I've got this theory because a lot of religions end up at the same place with ideas of an afterlife with incarnation. Like there's a theory that the burning bush in the Bible was a DMT bush, right? And that Moses inhaled it. There's a general theory that a lot of the prophets who said they talked to God were people that had just done a buttload of psychedelics, right? So and then they're like,
I wouldn't put it
I
outside
talked
the
to
realm of
God.
possibility.
Well, yeah, and while they talk about how with DMT, everybody seems to go to the same place, encounter the same spiritual beings, right? So then you come back from that same place, and then you write down your interpretation of it. Because as I said before, if you haven't made it to that place through meditation and discipline, your mind isn't going to be put together
you'd
in a
go
way
crazy.
to bring it back. Well, you don't bring it back. Like everything I ever brought back to DMT trips after. The trip was long, but what I remember of it is a lot like the sex scene from Demolition Man. Right, where they put those things on and all they're seeing is flashes of it. So you're coming back and you've got this sense of touching something so much bigger than yourself, and you know that there's something else out
fleeting
there.
sense,
But because
yeah.
you haven't done the meditation and that to have the mental discipline, it's just like, or sort of like Johnny Mnemonic, where he gets, the old. Keanu Reeves movie where he's got the implant in his brain. He gets so much shit jammed in there at once that he can't even read the information. He just gets flashes of it leaking over, right? So unless you're like a monk who has actually studied how to send to astral project without drugs, you're not going to have the mental ability to really bring back everything you need
I think
to.
you're underplaying the ability of the mind already on its
Well,
subconscious
I'm not saying you're
level.
gonna lose
We're
it all.
doing that constantly if
Well-
we're not always connected to that.
So what I'm alluding to though
Like
is
it-
so like a
it-
person
like
like,
a-
Moses,
There's a buffer zone somewhere.
Moses,
here.
who is not say Buddha, someone who's gone to astral project through study, he goes and smokes this burning fucking bush, and then he goes up there and he gets a 100% picture of God, but he can only come back and explain 30% of it, and the 30% he sees, you end up with the Christian theology, right? And then you have maybe Muhammad, he went and fucking did a DMT plant, and then he went and saw this picture of God, but then all he was able to recall was a small percentage of it, and he wrote his theology based on that. So there's all of these religions that have similar overlapping aspects, but
Abrahamic.
differences. And because these people did these drug trips, this is my personal theory, and they were able to see God but not see the full picture of God, and then they build their theologies on this. And then you get a lot of prophets who are like, no, I'm the only one allowed to smoke the burning bush. Oh,
Yeah.
God only talks to me, right?
I really firmly believe like with DMT, it's a perception based experience. Like what you're perceiving going into it is how your trip is going to unfold. Like if you're going to go in with a negative perception and that type of thing, you're going to go to your DMT hell, as you said.
Yeah.
But if you are perceiving a good state, you're gonna have something better. And it's the same thing with religion. Like going back to the death thing, it's what you perceive it to be. If you want it to be going to heaven and seeing angels, and that's what your thing is, that's what it is. But it's how you perceive it. It's all based on a general
Perception is
but
reality.
It's your power of your mind. But it's as you said, those people that grow their mental strength to have this ability to control these things, but it's all just based on personal perception, how they visualize it, how they're nature and nurture affects everything. It all just comes down to that one single, moment of everything going
The
on.
the thought that always comes into my head unfiltered is that perception is reality, number one, in that I personally believe, and I've always believed, that when you die, and this to me on a personal level was kind of confirmed for when I did DMT, your afterlife is basically a reflection of how you live this present life. I personally believe that life is infinite. I believe that when we die, we all go back to that same one energy. I believe that it's consciousness. I think that we are all, that's how we're all connected.
You brought up a word, reflection, and I feel like we're based on a reflective state of our environment a lot.
Mhm.
And I was subject to a lot of media and TV-based reflective thought. If it was on a TV, it meant it was true. And in the format that it's sent out as information. So at the end of the day, like, I'm going to watch myself through a TV screen if it be, and because like when I went through the DMT trip, it just was breaking down just the perceptive value of reflective mind. And if I'm going to be told that the world is a happy place after this, then I thought that, I was told that. So
That's your environment.
So
That's-
most of us are in an environment that are being told we're subject to fear. At the end of
Absolutely.
our lives, we have had now a reflective thought of our whole life of fear-based living. And so how do we break that mold with introducing PTSD treatments? And then you don't just give someone a mushroom trip and go deal
No.
with it. There has to be, like you were saying, a ceremonial shamanic use. If
Yeah.
been modernized in our time of Western culture smashing.
Magic
I
mushrooms
no
are now
longer-
becoming, like microdosing magic mushrooms are now becoming an actual medical thing. And you always hear murmurings within the cannabis community that, once the fight for cannabis legalization comes, that their next step is going to be fighting for medical purpose use of magic
I'm a
mushrooms and
psychedelics
microdosing.
activist. I'm a psychedelics
I have
activist.
nothing against psychedelics.
I microdose on
I-
LSD on a regular basis, like twice a week.
I want
I
to
think
jump back
I think
in
it's
there
the key
too,
to curing mental health. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to jump back into there saying like you needed like that shaman
A
ritual.
guide.
Yeah, well,
because we
yeah,
are reflective
I was
beings.
just
what are
saying
we
it was more
reflecting
like
in
it was
our
just more
choices?
someone like he was just telling us his experience more than like less than as being a guide. And I just went through it as like on my own personal venture to discover it. And then when I played around with it, I tried very small doses, smoked it in joints, smoked it out of pipes, and out of a gravity bong and whatever. But and like I found out how much I'd need to do what, and I how to do it, right? And
Yeah.
I never really thought of like I needed a ritual or anything. It was just like if I thought of a time and place that I was there and I had it and I was ready, I'd be like, hey, let's do this, But it wasn't ever like a planned thing. It was more of a spontaneous action that just happened to it. So I wouldn't really say it was more of a ritual. It was more just, to me, it was just like a in the moment, like this is the perfect opportune time. Let's do this.
But-
Well, I'd like to bring in some people who've been commenting in the chat. Right, Ray was going back to when we were talking about, and you brought it up just now, the feeling that you're with when you're going into your trip.
Yes.
Right. So some people go and do DMT or they do psychedelics because they want to go and discover something, or they need to sort something out internally. Like there's a lot of if you have a positive mindset going into a psychedelics trip, right? But I'll often do a lot of LSD if I've got a quandary in my life or a conflict I'm trying to work out, not around people, just by myself, and then spend like 8 hours thinking on my problem and going through various emotional states, and then
On an
usually.
altered perspective.
Well, if the solution feels good to me on psychedelics, then it's probably going to be good when I'm not on the psychedelics, right? Now we go into
Makes
you talk
sense.
about
That
shaping
totally
your
makes
trip,
sense.
right? There's a lot of links between, like Ray was talking about how you can synthesize DMT from grass, and it's in everything.
Yes.
They
Yep.
theorize that there's the string theory, right, that states that we're all connected by tethers of energy,
Yep.
right, that take us all the way back to the Big Bang, right? And then if you, I've got some stuff up on Carl Jung, the Collective Unconscious, I'll bring up here in a minute, right? But like there's a thought, if you think about like Douglas Adams, where there's interdimensional mice watching us, right? That what we are parts of greater energy beings, and we either give up part of ourselves or project ourselves into a physical reality where we are then unable to remember our energy reality, and we exist through these lives almost in like a simulation, right? And then when we die, we take back our experiences from this reality back to the energy realm, and it becomes a part of the collective unconscious, and then that helps shape the universe moving forward, right? So there's the theory that we are all connected. So we could have lived countless lives, parts of countless lives, just because the energy in your body does not get destroyed when you die. Energy can't be destroyed. It can only change form. So we shed our meat coils, and then our energy goes back. And this is where the thought of things like cell memory comes from, right? Where you remember things from previous generations because you are building up like human being 10.1, 10.2, 10.3 as you live through ages, right?
Will my kid remember my trips?
Or your kid remember your trips? I think that it's more like moral impressions, right? Like they talk about stuff like there'll be a set of twins born, and if they're separated at birth and grow up on different continents, then when they meet later in life, they'll both have like similar types of dogs. They'll both say work in the arts, or they'll both work in the trades. They'll have married people that look similar and stuff like that. So there's a degree of cellular memory, right? So part of that is about energy changing form. Like if we think about the whole your soul is just countless souls made up together that piece each other off into other beings when you die or a birth. The thought would be when you have a child, you piece part of your soul out and your partner pieces part of their soul out, and then they just build their own energy with impressions of your life and impressions of you. So the teaching of morals to your children, the thought would be, is more than just a physical act of sitting them down at a desk and saying things. It's part of your being and just your ness.
There's so much that we don't know scientifically too about like the unused portions of our DNA, and I'm not a scientist and don't claim to be, but I'm a layman. But you always hear about this unused portion of DNA, and what if they figure out more stuff about what's going on in that unused DNA? Maybe the hidden secrets are there. Maybe it all carries through like a file or like a computer chip, or we're just a continuation. We're a biological computer with a consciousness.
This came to mind.
Hypothetically.
What of the use of DMT, and if you're a user of psychedelics, does once experiencing a DMT trip enhance or reduce any other experience after? Do you gain a better insight after using then mushrooms in your recreational or personal medical shamanic use? Do you get a better insight after having an extreme out of body experience that DMT allows to experience, and then return to LSD, let's say, or let's go to engineered designer drugs, and then just knowing that you had that insight of an experience out of body with that you are greater than what it is and all this. So
like wanting to go back to that state.
Well, do you want to, or do you just then utilize other trips, or does that just activate through those trips the same neural processes that maybe sometimes I had a mushroom trip and I reached a DMT level breakthrough
right
in with amongst a crowd of people, and it felt like I elapsed time and I was brought and picked out of my body. Hey, you're doing a great job with bliss. Let's bring you up in the forefront of all existence and put you in the toroidal pillar of existence, and there you'll stand tall and exist for a moment, and we'll put you back in your monkey body, and you'll get back to your buddies jamming out with a big smile on the side of the beach. But it felt like time was no longer, and could that have happened because I didn't miss a beat?
I believe it could.
Magic
mushrooms,
my
they're
guitar,
psychedelics as well. They release
very high,
yes, they're poison
and blissed in a presence of community, in a state of happiness, positive environment, bliss, water streaming right through, and as to say the connectivity of everything. The turbulence of a rapid will lead to the ocean, and the ocean up to the sky. So everything really is connected, and community as well, and on thought form. So the collective consciousness and all those levels. So at one point, I reached that level of DMT breakthrough, not even doing DMT.
Well, that's what we're talking about with like when I was talking about Buddhists or like freaking Shaolin monks and stuff like that, who that breakthrough, like you produce DMT in your own pituitary gland, is my understanding, in your body and stuff like that. But the thought is that if we go back to what I was talking about being projections into a physical realm from higher beings, right? The thought is with enough training, you can let go of your physical body and go back to this realm for visits. I think if you went back for longer than a visit, that would be dying. You know what I mean? Is what it would be called.
Totally.
So you talk about being able to break through and have these moments. My friend, my roommate Derek, who I want to bring on, who's really into the seeds of karma and all of this stuff, talks about how there's, and I'm probably going to just butcher the shit out of what he tried to explain. You live your whole life, you live multiple lifetimes waiting for a moment of awakening, right? And so for some students of Zen and stuff, it'll be like you are just walking along one day, and then a very specific a dewdrop falls off of a leaf and hits a pond, and it just the sound of it in your mind goes psh, and the resonation of the fucking just all reflects, and suddenly you have become an awakened being, right? So the thought would be, if you kind of combine it with the other shit, is you're someone who's lived so many lifetimes and you've had enough mental acuteness that you've pulled enough of your previous lifetime's energies back together for your next incarnation, that you've now reached a slightly higher level of awareness, and you're aware of when, and then once you become awakened by something, you become like the Buddha, you become like a fucking Zen master.
So there's a bunch of little mini Buddhas and Zen masters tripping across.
And people have various levels of enlightenment. Or for example, the Wim Hof guy who I'm following, who does the cold man stuff and everything. I've been doing the cold showers and shit. It's all about meditation, where he's able to climb these fucking mountains in shorts. Like, he's been most of the way up Everest, gotten past the point where many people have died in a set of fucking shorts and bare feet. And he talks about it's all about meditation and focusing on the back of your neck and shutting down your higher brain functions, which are burning off a lot of your energy, right? And he does all of this. So he has reached a degree of awakening where
How many
he has
resilient
control over his
folk are
body.
at this level of meditative state and they're unaware of it, just given their world state? Let's say poverty
savants,
line.
perhaps certain.
I think a
savants,
lot more
certain
people than
musical
they
geniuses.
realize. I believe that a lot more regular people are at that state of Zen. They don't even realize it. Like,
Wouldn't that be a pertinent like certain prerequisite? You don't
I don't
even
know.
aware of your Zen state.
see, I'm
You're
one of
just
those
living
people.
it.
I'm one of those people that actually believe that anything that gets your mind to that meditative state, it's a good thing. But at the same time, I see a lot of people, like, they overcomplicate things. I'm not talking about what you're talking about, Tyson, because I actually think that's very, very interesting. Like, where you're like putting like your body at such like an extremely cold temperature, and that you should like keep us posted about that. Actually,
I'm gonna be after
there's-
3 weeks. I'm gonna start submerging in ice baths.
but I mean, at the same time, you have a lot of people who they just overcomplicate shit. I personally believe that God, quote unquote, is just consciousness. It's the universe. And that we as human beings and everything else, we all come from the exact same stardust, and we all have this energy called consciousness. And everything that I say on this microphone or to you guys here, I have a filter. But there's a thought coming into my head, and I'm filtering and choosing my words, and this is how I speak to you. And this is how everyone works. This is how everybody works. We have that filter. That's the consciousness. That's the thing that, in my opinion, does not die. When we die, our vehicles, basically, our body, will go back into the earth. But that consciousness will go back to the original energy, in my opinion. So everything that we've experienced throughout this lifetime, we take back to that original consciousness. And that, is my opinion, is like the whole meaning of life. We're receptors of the universe. We're receptors of that universe because we are all that we all are that universe, in my opinion. And I think like DMT helped me and helped me come to. I've always kind of believed that as a child, like growing up. I've always kind of haven't really worried too much about details and how to reach that state, because I just believe that this is why we're here. Live life. Like, we're so blessed. I mean, I'm sorry to go on this rant here. That was really good chatter, but I'm going to say it right now. Actually, I'm really not sorry. But
Sorry, not sorry.
we won the lottery by even being born, period. And then we won the Lotto Max because we were spawned on this continent. And so don't waste it. If you're a religious person who thinks you're going to go to heaven or hell, you probably shouldn't waste your life, because that you're building towards what you believe. If you're an atheist and think we're just going to like rot and die in the ground, okay, fair enough. You probably shouldn't waste your life, because you're only getting the one life.
Because you haven't
Absolutely.
been basically
But just
hijacked.
don't waste it. Seize the fucking day.
Yeah. Oh, I know people. I mean, if you look at
I love
the
talks like
potential
these.
for life in the universe, now they say there's millions of galaxies and blah, 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 blah. So we know that there's other life out there. But the reality of physics right now is that there's a good chance shit does not travel across space in its own lifetime, that a lot of these beings who say do travel across space are ones who are able to do so through an energy dimension and then reconstruct themselves. I just want to make a couple of corrections out of the chat. I had said pituitary gland, and so would Ray as well, but it's actually the pineal gland, which is would be known as your third eye, which produces the DMT. Right, and there's I've got some links here from the Waking Times. And consider the I wonder if this is going to pop up. Considering the hypothesis that at this point there are no proven explanations, here are 3 possible explanations for a DMT experience. There are no aliens. It is rather a subjective yet extravagant hallucination of the mind. 2, DMT allows. Oh my God! Stop posting so it stops going up. DMT allows awareness of processes at a cellular level or even atomic levels, tapping into the neural pathways of the brain or even communication among molecules. Or 3, DMT provides our consciousness access to higher planes of existence which are inhabited by foreign entities. And that's the one I like to go with. The last theory comes from one of the greatest psychonauts of the last century. The theory comes from one of the, which is Terence McKenna. His groundbreaking theories have challenged even the most of out-of-the-box thinkers. Was a dedicated student who aimed to fully understand psychedelics and played an expanding role in our consciousness, right? Now, I used to intentionally K-hole. Right, there's a reason that they stopped using Special K as a surgical.
What is K-hole?
Special K is a fucking awesome sedative.
Too much ketamine.
Oh my God.
Oh,
yeah.
ketamine.
Ketamine, yeah. So ketamine is used still in veterinary experiences because we don't care if cats understand that God is out there, which is probably why fucking a lot of pets are so weird. But they used to use Special K on people before they would operate on them, and a bunch of Special K fucking sends you into a K-hole, which is where it drops your soul rather than up. It drops it down out of your body into a dimension of fractals, a lot like remember watching fucking Ant-Man when he zooms into the mini space and then you can see shit on an atomic fucking level? That's a lot like K-holing from what I remember. And I used to
It sounds like a bad porno movie.
Oh, I do like a ton of Special K and then go into the shower and just lean against the wall and wait for the K-hole, right? And then you start to have auditory hallucinations and shit like this as you fucking drop through
There's
space
better
and time.
ways.
Curl
According to who?
Shower doesn't sound too fun. to me.
Well, no, because you just have to know. You have to be good at what you're doing. By the way, disclaimer: do not do the things Tyson has done.
No.
I'm a very specific case study in resilience to not being dead. Honestly, and I have physically died twice.
Wait 3
from
weeks. He's gonna
opiates.
prove it with the ice bath.
Oh
Yes.
fuck!
Yes.
I'm a special case study. But I used to. But part of the reason they stopped using Special K is because it gave
He's a
people
K-hole,
these fucking
yo.
out of body experiences, and they would come back going, "I fucking saw God. Did I die?" Right? Like, so Special K was
Whoa.
another one. Yeah. So Special K is like more of a psychedelic than anything else.
I will say this:
Here's
I
a
saw these
clinical,
spiritual beings when I was on DMT, and it's interesting that I tried acid for the first time like a year later, and I saw the same spiritual, like they were like 3 tall, like just tall, skinny, like they didn't even really have a face. It was just interesting that I saw the exact
were they like
same
an
ones.
off gray color? Did
Yeah,
you see a
they were
tall-
an off gray color.
Right? Did they try and probe you?
No,
Oh,
no.
okay, no,
Oh,
but now
we're
that I know, I
cross-referencing
realized that this
here.
was a joke. I realized that was a bit of a joke, but no, because this goes back to the thing we were saying before. But there might be aliens, or it's in our minds, or it's physically impossible to travel the great distances of
That's-
space. So you travel across space through astral projection. Like, I got this fucking theory. Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about how there's probably a multiverse because the universe never makes one of anything ever, right? So my theory is that there's like a multiverse, an energy universe, and another multiverse, maybe with different sets of realities. And there are no ghosts because that's fucking stupid. There's just people in the other multiverse doing massive amounts of
Phasing
DMT
in,
and going
phasing
too
out.
far through, and then be like, "Woo! Look at
They're
me
all
here," and
stuck
then
over
going
there?
Yeah,
back,
stuck in
coming
our
back.
plane.
You know, only
Built
for
their
a
own
little bit.
civilization.
Well, it changes time, right? If you've done DMT, you know it changes time. It's kind
So
of
are you
like that
saying
movie
when I'm
Inception.
dreaming, I'm actually phasing into other people's reality?
You might be. You very well might be. And this is why dreams look so weird, because there might be different laws of physics, right? Like, you got to remember, quantum mechanics, right? DMT may be injecting you into a quantum state. Like quantum entanglement is the ability for molecules or particles to whatever to be in more than one place at once. So you may be doing DMT, which is allowing you the fucking particles that make up your mind to exist both simultaneously in your mind, keeping your body alive, and in the energy realm. Right? There's like a lot of quantum stuff. Like there's this. So quantum mechanics, the universe is the way it is because there's stuff alive to fucking observe it. Because once something becomes observed, it becomes a fixed state, right? So if all the life in the universe suddenly got snuffed out at once and there was nothing around to observe the universe, would the entire laws of physics go into a fucking turmoil and just start cascading
My mind is
until some other living life form was able to come up out of the chaos? And then as soon as another life form, even a cellular one, is able to come up and start experiencing the world around it again, it just starts to fucking solidify the laws of physics out for it as it observes the universe, and it takes it back from a quantum state to a physical state.
But that's going on back and forth, flashing as fast as a light, or
It's
deal, right?
Well, I mean, like they say that things are
light
not.
speed is the relative form of like that,
When you
deciphering everything basically, and
when you talk about
entirely.
laws of physics, I don't think humans are capable of understanding what the laws of physics are. Our understanding
100%
is
agreed.
probably bleak meaning of existence, nothing, right? Like, you know.
We have a too narrow-minded state of mind. There's just humans in general. We're like, once we figure it out, we go with that, and we're no longer
it to
open
the
to other
computers.
possibilities.
There was a
And that's-
fucking
I
monk that
100%
got.
agree.
Yeah.
There was a monk that was executed in like the 12th century or 14th century, like that, because he fucking went to the church and said, "Okay, I'm pretty sure the sun is a star, and that there's planets spinning around it, and there's fucking planets spinning around other stars, and there's probably life on them." And then like, "Oh fuck, kill that guy," right? But I bet you he just stumbled across the wrong plant and did a whole bunch of it, and then went on like a fucking baller
So
trip.
that's the stone monkey theory, where in the primal form.
Terrence McKenna?
There's just like, let's say we're all monkeys using our till this day grunts. So we already had our form of communication. They weren't so articulate to the form of feelings and beauty that poetry has now led to, which maybe was because some stone monkey started going making funny cool sounds on mushrooms, the ones that don't kill you, because we learned
Good
through
point.
eating rocks. That guy didn't do too well in his digestive system, and you know, like, and so you just kind of like a reflective aspect of our community through our diet, through our environmental association. We solidified our thought-based form. Our brain is now just floating in this meat suit of, like, you know, calcium and tissues that are all basically based form of the, you know, planet. So
Well,
True that.
Ray brings up a really interesting point, because there's people in the chat who haven't done DMT and stuff like that, and the quantum bit can be a bit hard to grasp, but he's got put a pretty good Scooby-Doo Star Trek style explanation on it, where like basically we are ants, and when we do DMT, it's like fucking a giant celestial being picks up an ant and puts him on its shoulder and goes, "Look at all the ants down there. That's what you are," right? And then you put it back down, and you fucking just can't even grasp what happened as you were plucked out of the ant colony and then given the bird's eye view of something you've only ever seen from the fucking ground, right? One of my favorite ways to explain DMT to people is if you've ever read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. They take Zaphod Beeblebrox before he can become president of the galaxy, and they put him in a machine that fucking gives you your perspective and where you are in the universe, so you really aren't all full of yourself. And so for him to get around getting just destroyed because of his massive ego, he put a second head on his buddy and partitioned his mind, right? That's why he's a little insane. But DMT is that machine. Here you are walking along with your big ego. I'm Mr. fucking King shit. And then you
Stripped
smoke
away.
some of this,
Yep.
and your body just gets ripped out of your fucking
ego is
boom,
stripped.
and you're thrown into space to stand on the shoulders of God and look down and go, "Motherfuck, I'm insignificant."
isn't that death?
Maybe it's the part of the process.
I mean, well, it depends if you think his death is finalized, right?
The
Like
end
if
of the personality, which is so and so after the setting of consciousness, that is the collective sense of it.
the carbon in your body came from stars, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, at some point in time, just for you to exist, a star had to explode. For all we know, there was other beings living around that fucking planet, right? So when the star exploded, firing carbon throughout the fucking universe, bits of gold and everything, and shredded an entire civilization. For all we know, bits of it got to Earth, and we are made up as the dead carbon ashes of fucking an even ancienter civilization, right? And then bits of our souls are made up of their fucking energy.
It sounds so poetic and beautiful.
Death, it's an ever-changing universe. To be afraid of death, I mean, it's just another step. I'd rather live my entire life the way it is, and I used to be really afraid of death until I started doing a lot of psychedelics and stuff like that, and then realizing that you're just on another step in an onward moving journey, right?
And it is a journey. I think that we're just here to experience and learn, and then we die. Or we don't die. I personally believe our consciousness lives on, but our bodies, it's like a vehicle. Sometimes your car breaks down. Okay,
So understanding
get out and get a new vehicle.
Let's say associating the psychological, physiological aspects of DMT, could that help then I identify the main components to consciousness to then relate to biomechanics and making consciousness extend the life of the human?
I don't believe it's
After
outside
the
the realm
death
of
the
possibility.
body, if we then identify these DMT things, what makes consciousness trip, or make logic of this trip, and the filters like you're talking about, and the subconscious aspects that is the complexity of the mind.
Well, why don't we just stop dying, right, rather than moving the consciousness?
Yeah, so you're more like making the body better, and not just like making the host body better.
But does anyone here really want to live forever, like in this, like, because I don't believe in
Forever's
traditional
a long
afterlife,
time.
but I believe that like the spirit lives on and my consciousness lives on, or all of us
But
live
some
on.
of us don't have
So do
that
we really
belief.
want to?
I'm talking
No, I
about-
know exactly. So that's why I'm kind of asking everyone here, like, what's your personal, like, does anybody here want to
To
live
just
forever?
advocate on anybody else that don't relate their trips to spiritual aspects and just have an idea of personal betterment on, like, you are your reflection of the environment, but you have the will because of whatever belief system you have to expand that experience in greater sense. And there's math a lot of stuff that are being projected through computer science and math equations that are now grafting into these beautiful designs we have on the projection. Like the relate to a lot of what we see in closed eye visuals, and maybe our brains are just great math.
Absolutely.
processors.
Well, math
Well,
is the
of
language
course.
of the universe.
Actually, just a side note on that, there's a great thing, the story of math. If you're into math, it's kind of cool. I was watching it when I was in my last year.
Netflix, is that the one on Netflix?
Yes, it is actually. Yeah, it's a series, I believe. There's three episodes or whatever. But it talks about how and why math was figured out and created among humans. But you were talking about all these patterns and designs in life, and mathematically, there's actually a thing called, and I believe it's called phi, and phi is like the distance between your nose and your eyes and your mouth is all the same, or a sunflower has a certain amount of seeds going on around the outside.
Are you talking about sacred geometry?
Exactly.
Right now?
I am talking about the sacred geometry.
Oh,
But
I
happens?
have
What
delved
happens
into the
when a
sacred
computer
geometry,
starts
maybe.
doing it and there's no sense of connotation to sacred?
what happened? Okay, what happens when a computer starts doing it? Okay, I'm glad you got into this. Here, you take
Sacred
that.
is just something that
Because
we've
sacred
So-
added
is
to it
associative
ourselves.
to the subjective
So-
form of what people want to call good and bad.
I'm going to get back to I'm going to go right back to the Hitchhiker's Guide for the second, where they theorize that Earth is a giant computer built by interdimensional beings to figure out a problem, right? So, what happens when you start a computer? You turn it on. There's a giant burst of energy, and then it starts to run the program. So, you start the universe up, big bang, disseminates all of this shit across the universe, and then the program starts to run and compile itself and build itself, right? And self-learn, right? That's our universe. And then we, in our quest to, because we are made in God's own image and become God ourselves, start to make our own alternate universes, right? And we do them in these electric, in computers. But where are we to... How far are we from getting to a point where we make a universe inside a universe where we hit the button and boom, there's a big bang as the programming starts and it flies throughout it? I mean, look at how fast computers fucking time things. For all we know, the beings that are watching our fucking universe, right, we are existing on a speed.
It's existing right now. Just think about it in life. Think about microbes. We're looking at that, and you think of relativity as space. Our universe to the Pluto is so big. Think about a germ the size of Earth. In
Yeah.
relativity.
How many-
The ant on the gods.
How many
giant.
Yeah,
paintings?
exactly,
How
right?
many paintings, pictures have you created as a being of creation and put aside, and have never looked at ever again? So let's say if the complexity of the creation had gone to the level of life itself and Big Bang and all this stuff that you're talking about, and put aside, what if there is a creator but isn't of a savior like perspective that we have developed him as, because it was hijacked by people who are capitalistic
Oh, I see
on
what
this
you're saying.
level. So we're possibly a mold in the crack of the laboratory where we were created, where God is taking a look at his creations under the scope, but we're not actually being observed. We're the, unfortunately, scum growing in the mold pockets of the perfect little Goldilocks zone of the universe.
I think I get what you're saying. So, like, you had Van Gogh, who
Interesting
made like
point.
tons of paintings, and he was brilliant. But how much time do you think he spent looking at his paintings? So is God just out there in the universe, dropping life and fucking flourishing
the
planets,
best
but
rap
never
song
going
ever,
back there?
and drops the mic, never returns. To
Yeah. So he doesn't have time, and I know, and that's a lot of how I feel the universe works as well. There's not the Christian Judean God or the Islamic God where there's someone
taking
paying attention to what
advantage
you're
of a
fucking doing.
psychological form of
You know?
of victimization of just like, I need someone to save me from just existence itself. But why not then just understanding it through creating existence itself? That's where we're at by extending life, by making it in an AI form. We're trying to understand where we're at in relations to our creator, because we have no fucking clue.
Well, I've always been intrigued by the scene in the first Toy Story movie. When they're at the pizza place and it's like the claw, and they're worshiping the claw, and it's their savior, and it's gonna take them away, and it grabs a little alien squeezy toy. Little do they know, in the bigger picture, outside of their environment and their reality, it's just a fucking claw machine, and they're about to be taken to God knows where to be,
Well, that,
I'm
okay,
not saying I
see
believe
it.
it, but what if?
No, that's a-
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and I've always been intrigued by that scene.
That's a really good segue, okay? Because there's the thought, right, that if you look at the terms like the worship of God's Son and everything like that, a lot of our fucking worship used to be of nature and the seasons, right? Like God's gift to us was the sun, the thing
Where
that
does
gave us
DMT
light,
come from?
the thing that fought off, that fights off the darkness, keeps away the fucking predators, is God's sun, which warms us and everything like that. We used to worship the solar system, the universe around us. That's why a lot of the Machu Picchu, Galepo Teki, the fucking Druids, all of their shit is celestial and not putting their religion under the worship of one man, right? It's about the worship
But
of the
also
universe.
notice where they're located.
We came
on
from the sun. We
planet.
need the sun to survive.
Yeah, we were born in the
Absolutely.
hearts of other stars and stuff like
Exactly.
that, right? So you talk about the worshipping of the claw, right? Where the claw is not, it's actually the man running the claw that they should be worshipping, but they have no concept of that, right? So you look at our religions where we've gotten away from using psychedelics and drugs and stuff like that to give everybody the same experience, right? So now you have a priest in that place, and he becomes the claw, and he's acting as a conduit between the fucking little squeaky toys in the machine and the fucking person who's actually operating the machine, right? So that's what we're talking about with being able to fire your mind up into a higher consciousness.
Absolutely.
The sensory perception thing, where we are just taking pieces of energy from an energy realm and coming down here to experience the simulation that is this fucking universe, and then we are going back up there, right? Now, it's an uncaring universe. This is why you need like good and evil and shit like that. You talk about cellular memory and things like that. Even when evil people do evil shit, it's beneficial to the universe, because you only need like one in every fucking 100,000 people to be an evil fucker, just to remind the rest of us that that's not a good idea. But if those people didn't pop up from time to time, we would get
Well, who will take
complacent.
the actions that would make great benefit to those people who are so complacent already? So, like, you take action by maybe doing evil things, because like a good order would be use the good evil things.
Well, maybe so.
Like let's say you have a bunch of people being threatened, you have to take action. One person might actually, out of the 100 people, have the balls to take action.
Well, no, there's a difference between evil and violence,
The
right?
balance.
So,
Well,
I mean,
how
nature
do-
is
how
violence,
is
the
it
universe is
perceived?
violence.
Because some people say that
well,
violence in any order is
The universe is
Well, no,
chaos.
the universe
they're
is
so
chaos and
peaceful
evil.
and
Like,
chaos
if the sun
and
blows up and
Absolutely
wipes
it
out a
is.
solar system and extinguishes hundreds of billions of lives, was that evil or was that
Is that
nature?
intention?
That's nature. But fucking Jeffrey Dahmer, who actively goes and kills people serial killer style, that's evil. A
Is that
soldier
act
who
of
goes and
God,
fights
though?
on a line against, is it an act of God? Well, if God is the uncaring universe and you've got a universe that needs you to recognize danger, like, how would we know fire is hot if people hadn't been burned by it?
I think the universe
Right?
is random.
Exactly.
So-
What within the parameters
That's
that
what my doctor
we are
said.
given to survive and thrive, for better and for worse, it's all random.
I disagree with that.
There's good and
I'm,
evil.
I'm going back to when he was talking about like the string theory, and it also connects to into DMT with like the coexistence of like certain orchid growing on a tree, and those things cohabit with each other, and you see it in nature, or like a bird eating the bugs off a crocodile. Like that could be in a scope be the same thing, just on like their level of thinking. And oh God, I forgot where I was going with this now.
This is where the dabs start to kick in,
the
right?
dabs, yeah, the dabs going.
The second half of the podcast is always just
Yes.
And
Oh,
the
yes.
DMT.
The string theory and yes, the string theory. And now I forgot what I was saying. I'm sorry.
it's okay. This is where people on the thing who are running a couple of minutes behind need to fucking remind us about stuff, right? But I think that what we're mostly getting out of this is that you get a sense of you don't feel more alone in the universe for having done DMT or whatever. You actually start to feel more connected with the people on the world around you, right? And unfortunately, where I went back to how there are some people who claim to be religious prophets, and they're probably the ones that did drugs and then won't let the rest of the people do drugs because they want to be the only one that can talk to God. The further and further you get away from these experiences, or if you live in an ideology that is really restrictive to new experiences and stuff like that, you're not going to get these enlightenments. Like I have become less of an asshole in life the more psychedelics I've done and the more I've sorted my shit out. I mean, 18-year-old me was just a self-centered prick. And people who have known me for a long time can attain to that, right? And then you sort your things out. You do drug tips, like I was saying, like to do acid by myself and then think about shit and blah, blah, blah. Back in the day, when you had a shaman, like a druidic shaman or like the South American shaman, and you lived in a tribe, people think socialism's a good idea, but it's because they confuse it with tribalism. Like, you're only able to remember and have about 150 useful relationships, right? So there's nothing wrong with building up the people in your tribe. Like, oh, it's cool to lend money to your friend or your brother who's in your immediate tribe. If he never pays you back, whatever. But that doesn't mean I want to fucking lend money to some asshole in Ontario to sit on welfare or whatever, right? So tribalism good, socialism bad. In your tribe, you'd have a shaman. And that guy's job was to just be fucked up all the time and thinking about the shit that you're not really supposed to think about. He's always on some mushrooms. He's always stoned thinking about shit. And then you come to him and you go, dude, I am kind of depressed. And he goes, it's cool, man. I'm fucked up all the time. This is what I think about is shit like this. What we're going to do is we're going to do some mushrooms together and we're going to talk about it and blah, blah, blah. And then you'd fucking go on this trip. And when you're like kind of depressed or you've got something bugging your ego and you do acid or you do mushrooms, trust me, it's not going to be the best trip. You're going to cry. You're going to be upset. But if you try and like resist those emotions and don't fucking work through them, the thing that's bothering you is not going to go away. So what you're generally doing is you're purposely going on not a bad drug trip, but an introspective drug trip. And if you've got things bothering you, you work through them honestly, because it's really hard to lie to yourself while you're fucked up on mushrooms, right? And then afterwards, about a week later, you should do another drug trip just to remember why drugs are fun, right? So your shaman would take you when you're all depressed, and he'd fucking, here's a bunch of mushrooms, and you'd get all fucked up, and you'd be like, oh, I've just been an asshole to my wife and kids, and it's making me feel bad. And you're like, well, why didn't you tell me you were being an asshole instead of you telling me, oh, I was lying to myself about how much of a cunt I was to the people around me? And like, well, here's my advice, Steve. Stop being a cunt. You're going to feel better, right? And so Steve comes out of your hut the next morning and he goes, honey, I'm sorry I was such a cunt. I really had an inward thinking bit and I've been a real asshole to everybody. I'm just going to be better. Like, it's okay. We all forgive you because we like you. And then you move on, right? Now, in our modern society, you go to your doctor and like, something's really bothering me in life. And they're like, oh, do you want to talk about it? You're like, no, I'm just depressed. Don't want to deal with it. So they feed you a bunch of fucking antidepressants. And then you just keep going through life being a cunt to the people around you, but now not being bothered by it because you have antidepressants, letting you feel okay about not confronting what's wrong with you, right? That's why psychedelics are so much about dying an ego death, because a lot of the time your ego is what's preventing you from getting in touch, right, with yourself.
Ego is a huge obstacle for a lot of, like, everybody, like myself included.
Why can't it be a companion involved with the association of living? If
It
we're
can.
all so instructed to be fearing of death, why just companion yourself to the living aspect of happiness?
Well, there's a lot of
Why
problems
would
your
you wanna
ego
be-
can cause for you, like people who have egomania or shit like that. People who are unable to learn from their mistakes. Like, if you've never admit you've done something wrong, and I'm not talking about apologizing to people you've hurt or blah 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 blah, but I'm just talking about like, oh, I fucked that up. Then you're not going to learn from how you fucked up because you put a blank spot in your memory, you put a blind spot in your fucking perception of
Like,
shit, not
the
realizing.
The Jungian style would be to come to grips with the shadow of man's subconscious and conscious relationship, and some of you has an ill intent of just because you are man.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
are that
Temptation and stuff. You have to admit that you have temptation and shit like that. Like
Oh.
everybody sees stuff and they're like,
But you
"Oh, it'd be so
learn
easy to
from it.
walk away with that." But you're like,
Instead
"But
of,
I don't
like you
want that
said,
to
the
happen to
blank
me."
aspect.
And yeah,
You learn from the realizations, because he struggled himself with that depression of thinking he's crazy for having the
yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah, like, I mean, everybody's worried about, like, we were talking about schizophrenia earlier and your internal dialogue. Either I'm schizophrenic as fuck and I'm insane, or I just have a very active internal dialogue because I often have self-conversations with myself, like, oh, it's so, like, I don't know, I've had some massive drug problems, and sometimes I'm just like, God damn it, everything's so stressful. It'd be so easy to just throw everything up against the wall, say fuck it, and go dive back into a pit. And then the other side of your monologue goes, yeah, okay, now that we've thought that through, it's slap, and get the fuck back out there and pick up your shit and get it into a pile and deal with it and just take it to the shit store and sell it. Freaking Morty there. You know, it's that internal dialogue, and it comes into which one you want to succumb to, the one that tells you to fucking, the leprechaun that tells you to light fires on the playground, or the one that tells you to open old doors for ladies and just in general not be a piece of shit, right? And the people who have massive ego don't want to ever admit when they've let the other voice fucking guide them. And then they're like, oh, no, I did nothing wrong there. And then they don't learn. And eventually that fucking whole thing
So,
takes over.
Here's the thing for DMT. Would that be then an associative indoctrination to a collective sense of all this stuff and this that you're talking about, the internal dialogue, the collective consciousness, the connectivity to the string theories, all these
Yeah.
things, and if it could be done not if so clinical, but not so culturally associated to then it be bastardized because it's being taken out of context by most Western kind of.
Well, this is why you need
capitalists.
shamans, right? Because part of the whole thing about doing psychedelics and connecting with nature is like, man, if you've ever gotten like super high on mushrooms and then gotten lost in the woods and then fucking blah, 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 and you've had like a weird fucked up night and then the sun comes up and you realize you're in your buddy's backyard and you've been like fucking 100 feet from the house, but just so cocksucking high that you couldn't find shit, but by the time the morning comes, you've really learned a thing or two about yourself. You cannot replicate that in a lab or whatever, and that's why you like shamans, people who just spend there all the time fucked up. Like try eating a double quad of acid and then watching cartoons. I really believe that Pixar cartoons have some really good messages, and I want to like start like a shamanistic sub-religion that's just about eating massive amounts of fucking acid and watching Pixar cartoons. But
Oh my
try
God,
So
I
what
will
if
hold-
what if
I
the
lose
child
my
state
fucking
here?
mind.
Do children even have to experience any of these psychological altering drugs because they're already on a trip if they're watching these movies?
well, their brain does not have the fucking weight of the world weighing down on them, trying to pay their rent and fucking blah 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 and feed their children and shit like that. So they're able to exist in a slightly
But are they
freer
on a
state.
trip when they're watching their cartoons, as you would be on a trip watching the same?
I get high
cartoons?
so I can go back to the childlike state of non-worry that was me before I became a fucking adult, right? That's why kids shouldn't do drugs until they're adults, because then they're fucking shortening the actual part of being a kid, right? I mean, like, I fucking do recreational drugs to escape from just all of the bullshit life forces upon me on a daily basis, right? I mean, like, that's what life is. Here, it's adversity, and then a space in between adversity, and then more adversity. And the people that fucking suck at life are the people that spend all of the space in between the 2 points of adversity stressing about the last fucking bad thing that happened, right? The people that enjoy life dealt with this, and then they enjoy the fucking bit in between, and they fucking are ready for when the next thing happens, because life is just like, you know, trying to squeeze the good out of uncontrollable shit happening to you. You know why I make plans? So I have a point of reference for what life is fucking up, right? Because if you don't make plans, then you have no point of reference and you just think it's a series of unconnected mishaps.
That's great. Prioritizing your
Okay.
prioritizing your memories in form of like the Peter Principle. Which one's more important? By like the failure to live up to what they were planned to be.
Oh, well, okay. I fucking,
Well, this one almost made it.
I had a lot of
Bell
problems that
curve for your memories.
it led me to a lot of drug use, thinking that I had to please other people, and like that there was this expectation. Like for a while there, I wore suits and worked for Telus Mobility and shit like that, and was just like, you know, all slick and shit, thinking that that's what society wanted from me, and unhappy as fuck with a massive closet drug problem. It's weird, right? And then you start living your life for yourself and like being a decent human being, and the universe starts to give shit back to you. For example, I have an abacus sitting over on the counter there, right? And I'd been joking with the Go Green drivers, like, oh, you fuck your counter. Or I'm like the drivers. That was really bad. I've been joking with the fucking people who work down at the dispensary here and shit like that about if you fuck up your money count, I'm gonna go get an abacus, and you're gonna have to use the fucking abacus to count money because you're relying on your smartphones. But where the fuck do you buy an abacus? So I'd been talking about this joke for weeks, and then I ended up down cleaning out a mess from some shitty tenants that they left in my mom's store, like people who were on like fucking meth and just like collecting stupid shit. And I go and move a box full of random junk aside, just going through this terrible weekend, and there under all the garbage is a fucking abacus, right? And so that's the universe saying to me in the middle of a really,
You're on the right
really
path.
shitty day that, hey, even though today sucks, man, I know how bad you've wanted an abacus and where you're supposed to find one. Well, here it is under a pile of garbage in a crack
Where do we
house.
define the line of, oh, wow, that's
It's almost
great,
surreal,
to
that thought right there.
superstition,
Right.
to insanity? Because, like, let's say I keep finding white feathers on the ground. Eventually, I'm just going to only want to follow them because I associate them to, like, my whatever symbolic nature of angelic nature because they have feathers. Oh, my God, it's an angel's feather. It's a message. It's like that mentality can get lost if not well adjusted.
Well, that goes back to paying attention to like the Buddhist awakening thing where they sense a moment of awakening. Now, I think on a slower level, we were talking about people who are mildly awakened, like the Wim Hof guy who does the ice thing, or maybe like somebody who's like a fucking real like violin savant or somebody like that. And I think in a way that these are the people that have just kind of paid attention to the world around them and taken the cues. Like when the universe presents you opportunities to improve, you'd think that there would normally, like they talk about the universe knocking. I don't think it's so much as a physical knock, but just observing the world around you and knowing when to say yes. Jim Carrey's Yes Man, which they made me watch in Drug Rehab, really good movie. He fucking, it's like Liar Liar, except he has to say yes. He was a shut-in. He never did anything in life. He'd go to work, he'd go home, and he was horribly unhappy. And then he just started saying yes to shit. People would be like, do you want to go out this Tuesday? Normally he'd go home and watch TV. He's like, yes, yes, yes. He ended up learning Korean and how to play guitar and just fulfilled his life. So I think if you say yes to the universe and pay attention to the right opportunities, you get rewarded with more yes. And if you're not a fucking dick when bad stuff happens, you just weather it and try and get the good out of it, then you get rewarded with more yes out of the universe. And it's not like a dollar, like it's not an exact exchange rate for karma, but, you know.
You know it's weird, like when you kind of say these things and you're talking about the money and stuff. Like I've been really lucky. I found like, you know, I find $20 bills on the street like all the time. Like, what do you do? Like, are you just gonna like say, "Who lost a $20 bill?" You're not gonna do that. Like,
I
if
lose $20 every day to the government.
If I were to find a wallet, I'd be honest enough not to take any money out and return it.
Yeah.
But like, you know, if I was just find a $20 bill, it's mine. But like, you know, like I've been lucky enough to say like I've found these multiple times. Like, you know what? I don't feel like I'm a bad person, but you know, like what's to say I desire this or deserve this karma of just constantly.
Well,
getting
for all
money
you
or
know,
something, right?
somebody was walking along and they had $40 to go and buy fentanyl, and they lost 20 on the way, and they were only able to buy 20, and then they didn't overdose.
And I just
then,
saved their life.
Well, maybe the universe made them drop that 20 because the universe knew that a year or so down the road, this person is supposed to sober up and then go on and help other people do that, and was like, oh, I'm just going to make you lose that 20, man. That would have been the cap that killed you this time. I've got a bit of your back. You're not one of the bad ones. I was making a joke with the Naboxone kit we have over there. Fucking, there should be a system. They just carry a tattoo gun, and every time they revive somebody from Naboxone, they tattoo them. And if they see a guy with 3 fucking revives, they let him stay down at that point in time. He hasn't learned his lesson. There was a guy wearing a Naboxone kit as a goddamn accessory.
It's hard to get off
walking
of
around with it
that
on his
though.
belt.
I went to this rally on Tuesday. We marched from Diana Krall Plaza to the Nanaimo City Hall carrying a coffin and left it on City Hall's doorsteps.
Coffins are expensive. Where did you get one?
The organizers built it. It was.
It wasn't a nice coffin.
It's a very, very nice coffin. Well,
Did it lock from
it
the
served
outside?
its purpose. They opened up the door and there was shoes in the actual coffin, which they took out representing the people who have died of fentanyl overdoses. And
Fentanyl addicts don't own shoes. They sold them for fentanyl.
Well, the problem is that it's more of a mental health issue. It's not just a matter of you got to quit the drugs. And I wish it was that easy. I wish it was that simple. Like if you could just be like, quit the drugs, quit fucking around. Like when you're addicted, it's like, and I'm not like
Well, you
I
need
don't.
to
I'm not
replace
making.
the drugs.
I'm not making
You need to
excuses.
replace
I'm
the
not
drugs
making
with a life
excuses
really
for
worth
anybody.
living.
But at the same time, I mean, and I agree with you, but at the same time, if so many people are dying right now from this fentanyl issue, like it's. we got to have those safe injection sites. We have to have those types of services available only because people are dying. We also have to, though, at the same time, provide assistance to work on these mental health issues. And it's not just a matter of going to rehab or going on the waiting list for detox through VHA or whatnot. And quite frankly, VHA, in my personal opinion, sorry if I'm sounding a little bit controversial here, but I don't really think they give a shit. They were dragging their feet and not giving a shit until that safe injection site was set up in that tent in Nanaimo City Hall. I wish that tent had been set up in one of VHA's parking lots.
Okay, well, so I want to go back to that
And
thing
kudos
I was talking
to
about.
them, though, by the way, just for getting that permanent site set up. Anyway, sorry.
I want to go back to that. I lost a really good friend last year to a fentanyl. I got to walk into his house and he was fucking dead. I was supposed to be picking him up for work. That's the second time that's happened to me in a 10-year
horrible.
period. That's why I'm a little bit better at dealing with it. It's still fucking my brother up. Because we were all really good friends. Yeah, but this goes back to my thing. So if you watch Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland on drugs, and you actually read between the lines, where it's about white fighting red, not darkness, just red. It's about the white of being an actual human being, realizing yourself, doing 7 impossible things before breakfast, becoming a well-rounded human being where you don't let your aunt tell you what you do. You don't live your life for other people but yourself. You have to make these choices yourself, and you move forward, or you let the red overtake you, and that's your addiction, right? So this goes back to the whole lacking of shamans in our society, or druids, right? A person who would take a part of your tribe, your community, someone who is, say, doing too many drugs out to the woods for like a week and feed them drugs and tell them stories, right? Or in my case, I'd love to set up a fucking drug rehab where I take people and I just fucking one day I feed them a bunch of acid and then we watch a set of movies like fucking Alice in Wonderland or fucking, you want to watch one Wreck-It Ralph. There's a good one to show people who have divorced their wife and are being a fucking satellite dad. Wreck-It Ralph, which is all about just trying to, and shit like that.
There
Yeah,
should
that's
be
what I'm
cannabis
saying.
rehab.
And then the next day,
cannabis rehab.
Cannabis,
like using cannabis to rehab
no, you
off
should be
other
using
drugs.
large
What you're
doses of
trying to
mushrooms.
associate to is that
Oh,
a
yeah,
lot
fair
of
point.
the adult figures in our lives right now that are dealing with these addictive behaviors are potentially needing parenting in form of guidance that are no longer an adult-based my father and mother, but more a adult-based communal form of leading and directing, because we're reflective beings, and if it's done by leading them astray, which a lot of people have been under false pretenses and thinking they're going to find salvation, or then and having them all tripped out on like a wicked festival trip, like the Grateful Dead also have had huge mass trips that have maybe potentially greater some people's life or broken them because of their exposure to things that they weren't developed for, like indoctrinated practices and stuff, and they went to a festival and blew their minds, or they went and experienced what is all the rave. Drugs don't have very much promotion as much as a lot of other associative religious connotated like practices. Like drugs just are drugs for the reason that they're so effective.
Well, I
a good
accepted
point.
earlier this year the concept of an actual God, more so than just spirituality. Once again, I was on like a fucking buttload of acid, just trying to work through conflict with my buddy's death, who was actually a Mormon and really did believe in God, even though he fucking had a massive drug problem and died. And I accepted that there is something more out there. Like I think I've been like, I'm slightly one of the protected people by the universe. I fucking overdosed twice and come back from it just luckily, like was
Wow.
physically dead.
Oh my
and
God.
shit like that. I lived through a really dark shit, years as a meth addict and everything like that, and then got my shit together. I've even actually had I've called the cops on myself from fracturing my mind and having to go to a mental ward from fucking all of this shit, right? But they talk about some of the old druidic shit talks about how to become a druid or a wise man, you have to take wounds. Through your life so that you can gain insight, right? And so there's wounds of the mind and then wounds of the body and wounds of the spirit. And eventually, once you've suffered all these wounds, your mind opens to a degree where you're more willing to accept shit, right? So the 12 steps thing sounds really fucking stupid if you're like talking about a Christian Judeo God, but when you get jacked up on a bunch of psychedelics and take away some of the stupider 12 steps on trying to deal with drug addiction, like doing a fearless moral self-inventory while you're on fucking acid or mushrooms, it's pretty fearless because you have no ego to get in the way and hold that shit up. You know, apologizing to the people you've wronged is not, man, calling everybody up, especially people you really fucked over and trying to track them down, that's stupid. But doing a bunch of drugs and then just like apologizing to the universe and stuff like that, that actually kind of helps. You know what I mean? Although I hate the one about it's like the surrender to a higher power. Well, it depends on who your god is. My favorite god of them all is Crom. If you don't know who Crom is, that would be from the Conan books, right? Where Crom gives you strength at birth and nothing else, and cares not for you.
I think
you know.
I personally believe it's just kind of a matter of whatever gets you through the problem. And you know, with the 12-step program, you know, if you know, numbers speak for itself. So if it I know people who it's helped. I also know people who it didn't really do
So
anything
slaves
for.
to self-denial. It makes you. It
but
doesn't.
it's
It
all
makes
about
you
the
slaves to self-denial.
Yeah, but it's all about the individual, right? Like.
No,
I'm
it's not
I'm
about the
really,
individual. It's all about the tribe.
Well, I mean,
It's about the tribe.
if
That's
it
the
helps
wrong
people,
thought. No, I have to
though-
say, it's not about the fucking individual. They make people feel like Alcoholics
I
Anonymous.
understand. Oh, here, hold the
makes you
phone.
feel
Hold the
weird
phone.
in
I
the
understand what
like-
you're. I think you're misinterpreting me.
Sorry.
What I'm trying to say is that if like Joe Blow goes in there with he's an alcoholic, goes into AA, uses the 12-step program, and it helps him, and it's kept him clean off liquor for X amount of years.
Regardless
Awesome.
of the state
But there's
of,
other
What if
people who
Joe's
go
no
in and it
longer
won't-
funded a party and it's not Joe anymore? Did that help Joe?
I was gonna say, like, there's a guy, what's his name, McLuhan, who says the medium is the message. So individuality within the medium. So the 12-step program, regardless how it helped people, it's how they're coming about
It's about the
creating the
results.
format. So within.
We pause for a dab identification break.
Devil clock. This is how I get people to shut up so I can just say my point. Now keep going.
You can't do that to me. You know, I can't remember where I was at.
Okay, so fucking my whole thing though. So Joe was a really fun guy at parties, right? To have around, and then Joe has some shit go on in his life, like maybe his buddy Terry dies in a car accident, and then Joe starts drinking too much. Joe becomes a bit of an alcoholic, and then Joe gets told that he's powerless over his alcoholism and blah 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 blah. And then Joe stops drinking and starts going to AA addictively, right? And then Joe's no fun at parties anymore, and Joe's no longer your friend. So now Terry dying lost you two friends, Terry and Joe. Or Joe comes to my place, right, where we feed Joe a bunch of mushrooms and we go, Joe, man, you used to have your drinking in line. What the fuck happened? Now he's all on mushrooms. He's like, oh, I'm just all fucked up about Terry dying. We drank together all the time. I should have taken his keys and stuff. And then you're like, oh, so that's it, Joe. You're tearing yourself up because you're blaming yourself for your buddy's death. That's why you drink too much. Well, let's do a few more mushrooms over the next week or so. We'll work through this, you know. Then next week we'll work on what we call having 2 beers with dinner and not being a fucktard, Joe, so we can hang out. And then the week after that, we'll do a few more mushrooms and retouch on that whole how you are responsible for your friend's death. Month later, Joe comes back from my fucking rehab, and Joe can like go out to the bar, have 6 beer, call a cab home, and isn't like the not fun piece of shit who anybody I've ever hung out with from AA is. And then he's also actually confronted his issue as opposed to just denying what's causing him his problem, you know?
But the key component
it-
there is community and involvement and the tribal. And I was going to say back to where I was at with the message through the medium. And the medium is, if it's, you're saying it's directed from the individual case, then it's only putting Band-Aids on a person instead of actually
I'm-
getting to
I'm
the
not
key
talking-
responsive aspect
I'm not
of
talking
the,
about the 12-step program
the
itself.
cause
I'm just
of
talking about
why
the results
people are
of
addicts.
whatever program. Like if
the cause
like
is a communal aspect. So if we
Yeah.
are adjusting our communal to
Absolutely.
tribal, then we could maybe adjust the addictive personality of the individual by addressing the medium of how we're working through our personal day-to-day aspect of consciousness and why we have choice. and
Yeah.
why we're choosing to, like you said, to associate to the red and not the white.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and that we've lost connectedness with each other through cellular, my cell
I
phone,
found it
telephone.
here. Tell you the truth, guys. I have no idea your past. We're moving forward from here. There's no idea of who we are, why we're here. We're all just collectively changing our thoughts now because we've now discussed this.
Yeah.
I don't know who you guys are. I'm just moving forward from my point of conscious state. and that's the realization of tribalness from just my individual sense, just recognizing there's more to this than just my own perspective.
I self-identify as a
Absolutely.
druid. The universe told me I'm one. I did a lot of drugs, man. And if the universe lies to you while you're on drugs, then that's not a universe I want to live in.
I won't even. Yeah.
Drugs never lie.
No. Well, no, there are drugs that do lie. Methamphetamine lies. I mean, like, holy fuck. There's an
You are
Onion
not
article the other day that was like,
top of the
science
world.
on methamphetamine agree that methamphetamine is good while taking apart multiple stereos or something like that. It was
my God.
fucking awesome.
So I was stripping all the copper wire out of this drywall.
I mean, there are fucking coca. My friends were in Peru lately, and they were chewing coca leaves mixed with burnt coca leaf ash, which apparently gives you like the fucking ballerest trip. And also, apparently, all the green fucking chlorophyll in the coca leaves is good for you. You know what's bad for you is when you take all those coca leaves and you pour a buttload of gasoline, or if you've done Bolivian cocaine, kerosene, because it tastes different, and it does, on it, and then you make a mash like you would wine, and then you just dry that out under lamps and crush it into a powder. That's when you've gotten so far from fucking nature that the coca is no longer good. You go bleed some poppies, and then you fucking make a ball of opium. You mix that with some hash. You put it in a hookah. You get yourself some Chinese prostitutes, and you just do like a whole cosplay weekend, right? That is good. But if you refine that to the point where you have fucking fentanyl and carfentanil and heroin, now I realize that those two are synthetics of what that original process was, so we don't have to take over Afghanistan and make soldiers guard fields so you can get the South addicted to Oxycontin, sort of thing. So I mean, like, there are a bunch of drugs out there now that are so far from fucking nature that their effects are either so hugely intensified that you can't get any
I
benefit
feel like it's
from
now
them.
identifying the demographics who recreationally want to utilize these effects, and then find the demographics of the ones that want to nullify certain social conditions that now they're trying to escape, and that
Yeah.
becomes the risk zone. And then there's another factor for medical use, that they use it for whatever practical use in clinical form. They use it until the point of no longer necessarily needing it if the pain is no longer chronic. And then they get off of it. They don't even want to be on it because it bungs you up. It makes you fucking dumb. You can't drive, and you're fucking.
Well,
you're going through a process of healing that is maybe making retarding your usual self. And some people are using it to better whatever is already that state. So it's like finding those demographics and treating them so at a tribal level, like.
Well, there's a reason we have these keys that these drugs unlock in our mind, right? Like, so let's go back like fucking a couple thousand years ago when we were, say, wandering tribesmen, or if you believe the Graham Hancock thing, we go back 12,000 years, we were Atlanteans, which I totally believe in. We'll talk about that on a different fucking podcast. There's a great Graham Hancock, Joe Rogan, Randall Carlson about Atlantis and fucking giant meteors. But so we're tromping through the woods, right? We've got to go on a long ass march. Maybe we got to find food far distant, hunt some animals. You got the tribesmen. They need to march all day long, right, with their fucking hunting packs and shit. So they chew coca leaves all day long. Boom, 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 boom. Now, you don't want to be up all cock-sucking night after you've marched all day and you're trying to sleep on the cold ground. So fuck it. Let's eat a little bit of opium or smoke some in the fucking pipe mixed with some hashish or whatever. Boom. We all have a good night's sleep out in the woods. We get up. We chew some more coca. We fucking force march ourselves across the country. Intercept that neighboring tribe that was going to ambush the village. Kill the fuck out of them. All right. Then we go back and we're like, oh, chief, I feel really bad. I stabbed a dude in the guts. He screamed. It was horrible. He's like, here, man, eat some mushrooms while I explain to you how that guy was going to do the same thing to you, and it's not your fault.
But is that
Okay,
the
we're
roots
good.
of patriotism, nationalism?
I'm just saying that's how drugs were supposed to be fucking used.
But they were, but all these drugs that we're now utilizing were possibly already tried and effectively.
We were on a buttload of drugs until right after World War II.
Yeah.
Everybody. Like the 20s, man, you could just go and buy laudanum, which was fucking opium and alcohol at the corner store. You could buy snuff. Oh, look at Grandma's snuff box collection. That's cocaine. It's cocaine. It was pharmaceutical cocaine from the fucking pharmacy. You didn't need a prescription. You just needed money. Everybody was on fucking drugs right up until after the Second World War, and then they changed
Was
it.
the Roaring 20s they used?
Oh, it was just
they called
fucking
it.
all drug. I would have.
Roaring
See, a lot of people are
20s.
like, I'd go back to the 60s. I'm like, no, fuck that, man. The 20s, all those hot chicks in the fucking. And if you know the
lot
stock
better
market
dressed.
crash is coming, like, would you go back in time and
Jazz
stop
music.
Hitler? I'm like, no, I would go back in time and see a Queen concert, though.
Oh, dude, amen to that.
Yeah. I mean, you shouldn't change massive world events. If you try and stop that,
No.
Hitler, another one's just going to pop up, and that might be further along the technological timeline.
Ends
and then
up
you
it's
force
like a
nuclear
close
war.
friend you remember from your alternate timeline. So
Oh,
you're just
everything
like,
would just be
"Shit,
fucked right up.
Oh,
I knew that guy. Now he's this like world leader. Shit.
I'm friends with alternate timeline Hitler. Fuck. It's my pen pal. He's very well spoken.
I go on
He
DMT
actually
and meditate
succeeded
about
in
it, and
his
it
art
happens.
career in this alternative.
Oh my God, yeah, I saw a
reality.
really awesome thing about fucking.
I sold a Hitler at the Smithsonian.
It was about how it's always failed art school students that blame the world for their problems, and that why Hitler was fucking became a despot, became a leader, and blamed the Jews for everything.
Isn't that
It's
where
your
Eric
fault,
Clapton is at?
Eric Clapton.
No. He became God at one point in his career. That he was cherished and all this stuff. Like people attain these great levels of just because of what led them to
If
that.
he
Was
became,
it failure and
wasn't Eric
stuff?
Clapton's kid that fell out the window?
There's a lot of
Yeah.
misery in
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
individuals' lives, but if we then retain the micro macro, it's going on across the world.
Yeah.
In all spheres of
Oh.
great minds and
So-
alikes.
Didn't he do some of his best writing after his kid fell out the window too?
Well, the song "Tears in Heaven" was written about it.
So was that
he wrote
God's
about it.
plan?
It was introspect. Yeah.
Fuck. My friend Cap
Yeah.
or whatever put the funniest fucking meme up earlier. There's this guy lying in this bed in like rehab. It's a cartoon, and there's like this woman standing over going, "It's all part of God's plan." And then the next little fucking square of the cartoon is God standing in heaven from clouds with a fucking like signboard, and it says, "Step 1, create universe. Step 2, get Jeff addicted to heroin." Fucking
Hello.
yeah.
Simplification.
Oh, it was
General.
fucking yeah. So, but people say it's all part of God's plan. You know what I say that's really dark? Okay, so you hear about somebody who's like fucking, they go snowboarding in the mountains, then die in an avalanche, and then people are like, well, at least he died doing what he loved. Fucking the two people I knew last year that died of fentanyl who I didn't like, people were like, hey, blah blah blah, died from an overdose. And I'm like, at least he died doing what he loved. And they're like, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? Well, like I hadn't been a human being for 5 fucking years. Do you think I give a shit what happened to him? So, because you mean like when you're like you're like not a human being, and then eventually you come back to being a human being when you
But
can
you'd have
actually
to give
interact
a
with
shit
society.
On the fact that people get to that level of self.
Oh no, I did. Like I grew up in the
Yeah.
group home system
And
with
we brought
the
back.
one guy. You
maybe
know,
not care for the individual's choices, but at the same time, as we're going back to the tribal sense of how did you allow your tribe to not effectively mediate this guy's deterioration because he's a
Yeah. yeah.
once you lose
Yeah,
connection
it's
of
true.
a family-based relations under
Richard leads a tribe. He's like a chief. He's done what you would call a modern tribalism. He's established a community. He has his businesses, his little huts, and he's got his tribe and his huts, and he looks after his tribe really, really well. Right? It would not, in a modern sense, it would be called entrepreneurship. You know what I mean? But yeah, he'd be the big chief in our world, right? He's like goddamn Tyson, fucking guy. Yeah, see, he's keeping the fucking fire burning, right? Getting the bonfire going there, exactly, right? Then he looks after all of the people. The amount of people that come to Richard with their problems is staggering, right? And then he's just a pillar, right? Yeah, the Jenga pillar. But I mean, like, it's not leading people. Being the chief is not an easy fucking job, or everybody would do it. And you know what happens when everybody tries to be the chief? It just does not work.
That's true. So the saying goes.
Aboriginals. In
I
India?
thought it was First Nations.
But
Yeah.
the phrase was always Indians.
That's all it is, semantics.
No, I do bring this
Yep.
up because Justin Trudeau decided to spend. Okay, the one conservative leader wants to abolish the Indian Act, right, which actually makes Indians less have less rights than the other Canadians. They can't own property. The tribal, there's stuff I want to have somebody on from a tribe and somebody from the government who knows about this shit, right? But Justin Trudeau just decided to spend a bunch of money changing the websites and a bunch of letterhead from the Department of First Nations to Aboriginal, one or the other. It was one of those virtue signaling things that just cost us a shitload of money, right?
So what is it? Is it Aboriginal or First Nation?
At
I
the
don't
end
know
of the
which
day,
one
there's
sounds
gonna be
more
a global
virtue signally
affair.
to
Sorry,
you. I
went
mean,
too close there.
which one makes you get the biggest? I mean, he's doing the equivalent of liking shit on Facebook, but it's costing us millions of dollars.
How much is it costing?
Well, I don't know. How much do you think it costs to change the entire letterhead of a fucking whole government department and overstaffed? Is there a single government
Did it
department?
used to be? Was it used to be Indian or was it like?
Well, it was the Indian Act and used to be the Department of Indian
yeah,
Affairs, and then
like, I
they
don't-
changed it to either Aboriginal or First Nations. I'm not sure which came
Right.
first, and then they just changed
they're
it again.
changing it again.
Again, which achieves what?
Well,
It
nothing
waves you a
really.
big
It
virtue
just
flag
accepted this money
in the
to.
fucking air and spends our money.
Did the First Nations community request for it to happen, or did
No,
the Trudeau
doing a
government just
token.
do it?
He's doing a token virtue signal because he campaigned on cleaning up the water in like 92 native communities that fucking have terrible water contamination. And instead of doing that, he brought in 20,000 Syrians and then gave them each $6,000 a month in fucking welfare rather than cleaning up the communities that he promised he was going to do.
Well, did he give? Okay, first of all, the first thing that you said, did he fulfill that promise?
No, they still have filthy water. He hasn't cleaned up the water in one community, not one.
Okay, so Trudeau broke another promise.
One guy's not gonna do it. It's the involvement as like you're saying, leading and chief.
Every time you go to talk,
Yeah.
it was supposed to be his dab.
It's bad.
It's
been
supposed
bad
to be his
timing every
dab.
single time. No, I had like 5 before I even sat down, so I'm good.
Who's polluting the water to begin with? This is a genuine, honest, question.
I think that's a community to community basis. Some of them just could be in a community because there's a lot of our northern communities are in swamp or in muskeg, where unless you have good water filtration systems, you're just pulling from swamp or whatever. So I think it's a community to community basis, right?
Like, how did these communities survive in the past?
I think a lot of them were nomadic communities that moved and hunted and stuff throughout the seasons, and then it was only in the last 100 years they've been forced to settle down. No, these are all good questions. This is why I'd like to get somebody on who knows more about this specific
Yeah.
issue. I'd like to make a later podcast talking about unfulfilled Trudeau promises.
Word.
Aboriginal culture from the past to the transfer of what it is today, and the transition in between is kind of vague. I know how they used to be, more or less, in their traditional hunting grounds and everything. They kind of lived with the land, on the land, as part of nature, and then white man came in and just wrecked it all.
That is not that's a real dumbing down of the situation, right? I mean, like, I don't want to get into colonialization, but
DMT.
First off, there's a reason that we have the Great Plains all across the prairies, and that's because native tribes there were intentionally setting fire to the prairies every year before they left to keep it as a plain. The amount of buffalo that were here was artificially high. The reason that there's maple trees in Quebec is because they'd been doing it out there, burning down the boreal forest, and then when the settlers came in and killed all the fucking Indians off, they also didn't let the boreal come back, but all this maple started to grow. Maple was only an occurrence in Canada in like the last fucking 200 or so years, the entire weird culture out there. So saying that the First Nations people were living in harmony and were with the land and everything before we showed up, they were actually at constant warfare with each other and engaged in tribal slavery where they would capture slaves back and forth between tribes. And there's part of the reason that they hadn't gone the way of the Aztec empires. It's because they never developed a system of writing. They were too busy fucking fighting with each other. Right, and just this, there was a massive amount of tribal warfare. It was only when the white man came and it was a bunch of Eastern Indians that helped us fight and exterminate the Western Indians because they hated them.
See, I personally,
Right.
I personally believe, like, I love history, and I also love First Nations history.
First Nations a misnomer. It should be 30 nations that got here first
I
and chased
don't.
the Eskimos
We
away.
all know what we're talking about. That's just the wording that I choose to use. People focus too much on words and not enough on meaning. So basically, the First Nations history is very interesting.
Then what do you call the
But
Eskimos?
I think, or I feel, I call them the Inuit just because that's the
hate
word that I
that
choose.
term.
I'm also a maritimer. I call dinner supper, and I also call it food fiddles
I
sometimes.
call fried bologna steak because we're so fucking poor
It's
out there.
Newfie steak. Yeah. Card-carrying member
My
of the
generation
Conservative
calls
Party.
everything.
This-
So what do you call breadsticks?
Breadsticks?
Yeah,
Just breadsticks, but we have garlic
Would
fingers.
it be fiddlesticks?
No, but there's fiddleheads.
Oh my god.
They're baby ferns.
Fuck.
They're
Okay.
fucking delicious.
So my mom was a camp cook up in Quebec, right? At a fucking like survey camp, and they had because on native land. I guess the Quebec natives that live out in the bush are pretty fucking cool.
Oh wait, I sorry, but just before I just have to complete my thought about that.
About fiddlesticks?
No, about the First Nations
Okay.
thing.
Natives.
I feel that I would feel more comfortable if we actually had like someone with like who actually is like from the First Nations community to like come and join in on a conversation like this, because like I don't have
Indeed.
like there's all kinds of misinformation from one side and the other, as there normally is with most issues, and there's
Where
really
are we
no
at
way
in
to
the
fact
comments?
checks.
Where's the
Yeah.
comments at?
Oh well, you guys
There's
also
no
have
really
phones.
way to fact check
don't
this
do that
information,
stuff.
and
I
I'm
don't know
not
how it
saying that. I'm just saying that we all sometimes, myself included, get misinformation occasionally. I mean, I used to fact check and maybe
It's
have
been a
someone
bit since they've been
knowledgeable.
talking.
Otherwise, we're just a bunch of white people sitting around a table talking about First Nations issues.
Well, that was pretty fucking racist of you. I mean,
no,
I
it's
know
the
no.
reality.
No,
Just
that was,
because you
I
have
am,
red hair
No,
doesn't
just
mean we're
because
not
I
all
one. First off,
Fair enough. This is fair, sir.
no. First off, sir. First off, I'm I have proud ancestry going back into France and
I'm not
Scotland,
saying otherwise. I'm not-
England, Ireland. I have coats arms in my family. My family line came over here on the fucking Mayflower. Right, I'm in a book. My brothers are tracing our family tree back to Mayflower. I mean, we weren't the rich assholes on the Mayflower. We were the poor fuckers you saw on like Titanic down in the bottom. I said I was related to Irish and shit, right? But like my family's been over here for 300 goddamn years, right? Helping to settle the country. So first off, I think I can. We have a little bit of what's going on, but also just saying white people. We're not a fucking monolith.
I'm a sarcastic.
We're
I'm being sarcastic.
You know what I mean?
Honestly,
No.
but,
Just lump us
yeah.
all in together. We don't have unique tribes and our own unique history.
Lump
you know,
us all in
you know
together.
how bad it
Coming
was
from Tyson.
You know how bad it was for my people in Europe where they couldn't practice their religious freedom and shit. They were like, "Fuck, we have two options: stay here under the boot heel of this king, or jump on a rickety boat for 3 months, not knowing if we have enough to eat, shoot for a place we've only ever seen illustrations of. For all we know, they were fucking sailing them 20 minutes down the coast and just murdering them all and taking their stuff, and there was no New World. But this chance was better than the king. You fucking show up full of scurvy, out of beer, right? And then there's a bunch of people throwing spears at you, or shooting arrows. I mean, that's how shitty it was in Europe at the time my ancestors got on a boat and decided to leave. It was better to miss death on the ocean and come over here and carve out a colony from an unknown land than it was to remain under the boot heel of European kings. So I'm just saying it was not exactly pleasant in Europe back then, and it was tough for everybody, and there are always winners and losers in colonialization. Like, for example, does anybody know that current day Iran sits where Persia was? Right?
It's constant.
Yeah, I
We
mean, the
have-
Persians have been
we
fucking
have
people up around them forever.
We have missing links because of constant destruction of cultural identity, of where the origins of so many of these, even the people that are destroying themselves.
Well, I mean, do you see,
undermining their own cultural identity.
Do you hear the Greeks asking Iran to pay reparations for when the Persians sacked Athens? I don't know. Nobody has, you know what I mean? So why are people so beholden to what fucking people who
It's
they are loosely
current.
related to did
It's current.
300 years ago,
Very current.
200 years ago?
Well,
That wasn't current. That was
what-
fucking Athens
No,
was
I'm
sacked by
talking
the
about-
Persian 2,000
I'm
years
talking
ago.
Correct.
about the residential schools.
Correct me if
the
I'm-
social.
That's
wrong.
terrible. But I mean, you go down to the states where they want
It's still
reparations for the
current.
slave
Correct
trade.
me if I'm wrong, though. I believe that Greece just demanded like a year or so ago that Germany pay them reparations from World War II because their country was bankrupt. Basically, they needed the
Because they were like
cash.
just going through and seeing what they're
Like,
like Germany.
hey, you owe us some big money
know
for
what?
World War II.
I'm pretty sure they were sitting around in Greece and they're this Merkel bitch is retarded. Look at what she's doing. I bet you if we sent her a bill backdated to the Second World
Oh my
War, she'd
God.
probably just pay it.
This is why we gotta have someone to do the fact checking.
Because I called Merkel a bitch. And
no,
retarded.
I dig that.
If you
I
get
just wanna
confused,
make
it's
sure,
Angela Merkel,
I
the
just want to
Chancellor
make
of
sure
Germany.
that I know what I'm talking about before I friggin' make funny
Oh my
jokes
God.
about it.
Fucking
After
Sargon
that.
Cobb was going off about how the Germans are trying to take over Europe again, but financially this time. That's why they're fucking let all these migrants cross the thing, and then they're going to be the last nation with any fucking fiscal viability left standing in the EU after Marie Le Pen wins France and fucking gets out of there and shit like that. And so by de facto, Germany will rule most of the Middle East and a bunch of bankrupt European nations.
Germany rises again.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Fuck.
Oh God.
They just went on a little holiday back in the 40s, and it was fucking. No, we just drove to France. We don't know what you're talking about. It's fucking. We want to see the Eiffel Tower. We didn't want long lines.
We now interrupt your regular scheduled
Oh.
program. Hey, I'm interrupting the regular program here to do this hour late draw.
What are we drawing the Kaitomi tickets?
No,
tickets?
no, it's guessing the weight.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, did you want to do this?
No, I
Guessing-
think you should.
I posted just this morning.
I saw the post about the weight.
Yeah, that's right.
Uh-huh.
So
Ooh.
I will show you the picture of.
Oh, I saw that one. Yeah.
Yeah, there was the one with the number on it.
Oh, cool. Oh, I can see the number.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, let's see if
that
the
was
first.
a
I'm gonna look at.
7.8. I don't know if you're
I
gonna
got
be able to focus in
35 comments, and I'm gonna see the closest one. It's without going over, right? It's
there.
that's,
Yeah, without going over. The closest to 7.8 without going over. That's how much that bud weighed.
Oh, 6.9. Okay, 5.7, 5.9, 4.7. Oh, 6.3. 5.8, 5.8, 6.4.
I was way off.
5.7, 7.3.
Yeah, I guess like 3.8 or something. I thought
I have,
I thought it was like magnified because I thought one of the leaves were like bigger, and I was
you
like,
can
that was a really close up
Correct
shot.
me if I'm wrong, but James A. Woods has the highest guess from 1 hour ago at 7.34 without going over. Unfortunately, Terry guessed 7.9, so that put him over.
Ouch.
Yeah, we determined the first day that it's got to be Price is Right rules. It's got to be Price is Right rules.
I dig that. I dig
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And this is why, see, which this tells me there are, even Kevon here, Kevon, you work for us. There are like 34 people in here who suck at guesstimating the price of weed, right? Who, without a digital scale, or the weight of weed, without a digital scale, they'd just be lost. You'd be like, here's $20 worth of weed. They'd be like, I hope so. So that's why you come to a dispensary, right? Like we have self-regulating. We are literally the fiber of the weed industry. That was James A. Woods. You
Decent.
got
Congratulations,
James Woods. Well, I don't know. I think you'd have to ask him, famous actor of film and studio. It's James A. Wood.
He ensures to tell people that it's wood. He's not an actor.
Yeah, but see, this is way funnier. Yeah, I mean, like,
This is true.
if I'm gonna
James
Wood.
Wood.
James Woods weed, I'm saying Woods. It's funny, and then James can come on the show and defend why he wouldn't just legally change his name to have the S.
What does James win again? What was that?
He wins weed. It's a dispensary.
That is so awesome.
What do you think you're gonna win from the dispensary?
I wanted you to remind the people listening.
Same reaction he'd have. He's like, what do you think?
I did remind them. Fucking stoners. I want to fucking make a strain of weed called Dory that just makes you forget everything that happened 10 seconds ago, right?
Isn't that what happens?
Like that? No, like
Happens?
not if you're like
Happens?
a well-trained fucking marijuana affects the memory. I also have some Kaitomi tickets to give away here.
Oh, nice.
All right. Well, how are we gonna do this here? Wow, back of the head. I think I might go to the live chat and give the Kaitomi tickets away to anybody who's still in the live chat. Give me the fucking thing off the table, please. Somebody hand me the thingamajig. Thanking you. All right. Going to give away 2 tickets to. Okay. I hope I fucking spell this right. Spelling's not my strong point. My brain is thus occupied with much deeper thoughts. I mostly spell phonetically. Tonight at 7. To the first person to tell me the name
I always think these days of the Joe Dirt movie where they parodied that scene
Of
where he throws in the auto trader in the basket for Joe Dirt. It's like one of my favorite scenes of all time.
extracts.
God bless Joe Dirt.
Okay, going to give away 2 tickets to Kaitami tonight at 7 to the first person to tell me the name of the extracts we smoked today. I mentioned it back in the beginning. Boom, boom, boom. You can either message me privately if you're a part of the chat. Send it to me in the chat. Yes. There was 2 of them there. One of them had a slightly more complicated name, right? You have to be here. The door is at 8, so if you're not here by 8:30 and there's more tickets to sell, I might just sell your tickets too. Keep the money, right? Just pocket it. That's how this industry works. Boom. What? Oh, can anybody remember? All right, until I get back on that, we really got to get the call-in line going, right? We got to get the call-in line going. Oh. Did I get private messaged? How do I get into chat? I will invite you, Linda. I'll invite you, Linda. Unless you remember the name of the thing. I kind of hate Facebook Messenger. Just a little bit. I fucking hate it. I mean, I don't hate the people on it. Otherwise, that's the only thing that makes it, yeah. Boom. Does anybody want to do any more dabs? I think we're going to do the contest giveaway, and this has been a really good podcast. I'm going to have to, this is the fun thing, is you get so fucking dabbed out that I then go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
And I spend a bunch of it trying to also interact with the live chat and stuff, so I miss little bits of it and stuff there we go. There's Linda. See, that's what I'm talking about. Then when I go back and listen to it, it's almost like a new podcast. Our audio quality is pretty fucking good. You didn't hear the names of the dabs, Linda. You have to go back to the beginning of the podcast. That was the whole
I don't
scam.
even know how to
Maybe
do
hint.
that.
That was the
No.
I'm trying
whole
to figure that out.
scam.
Maybe I'm gonna try to like call in. and
You
be
were
like,
sitting here when we named the dabs. We were smoking them. Oh, it was terrible. Yeah.
That memory, though, that short-term memory, sometimes that can be a bitch.
I know. This is why I like to fuck with people. I think I'm doing okay on these contests here.
Are we allowed to answer too?
Are you allowed to answer too?
don't know.
I you
I
know,
wish probably. For
yeah. If there's nothing here, can you remember? Answer.
Yeah, I did.
Go for it.
I'm gonna let
You're
someone
a
else
guest.
go-
You're
I'm
not a
gonna let
contestant.
someone
You wanted to come to the show anyways. You said
he's
you'd be
just
fine,
egging it on. He's just
right?
temp-
Do you remember the names of them?
I do.
Oh.
Oh, all right. All right, I'll give it another minute till it says 1:14, and if we don't hear from it by then, because we know that the radio cast is backed up. I think there's people trying to go back and look, right?
But I have a visual. I can see them right in front of me. You know.
Oh, here, look,
Like,
they can see them too.
Yeah, that's true. That.
Well, if they were watching the cast, the cameras should be on that shit, right? Oh my god, my phone is such a piece of shit now. I just took a picture and put them in the chat. The one is obvious. The other one's got a long-ass name that admittedly I mostly made up. What? I mean, interesting things come to me, and then you just, like, embellish the name and stuff and make them more fun. It's fun to do. I would love to be the guy that fucking names weed, dude.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of like
That would be
those Die Hard
decent.
movies, like the second one. You know.
Oh, wait, Die Hard 2?
Yeah.
Die Harder?
Yeah.
I love Die Hard 3, Die Hard with a Vengeance.
It's kind of like a sequel. You know.
There are no more Die Hard movies after the first 3. We can all agree on that. Right?
Agreed.
Like, I'm not a big fan of Orwell, but I will agree that no more Die Hard movies were ever made after the first 3 that were good. Just like
I've
Indiana
never
Jones and the
watched
Kingdom
a
of the
Die
Crystal
Hard
Skull
movie
does
in my
not
life.
exist.
not really into it.
Yeah.
What?
I've never seen Die Hard.
You, sir, are a disgrace.
Nope. Never seen it.
Well, right at that, there, I'm going to take the opportunity to jump out of the conversation.
What? Nobody's guessing. Go for it. Guess away. I posted the picture. If you know the names, Keenan, you can win and come to the show tonight.
Do it.
No, I'm going to leave. Did you fart, and that's why you're leaving? No. Farts on Patrick, walks away. He's like, no, I'm not going to be in a conversation where nobody knows about Die Hard except, well, the beard. Obviously, the guys with big bushy beards know about fucking Die Hard. It's a manly Christmas movie. And you know, there's a certain Christmas tradition at my house.
I've heard nothing but good things about it.
Yeah, because it's a
just-
fucking baller movie.
Never seen it.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Not opposed to it. Just meh.
Oh,
Whoa.
that is
Go lights.
pretty badass. I think I linked the podcast. Yeah.
It does relate to DMT with dying and all.
I just suppose.
Good closure.
But well,
I don't know. I guess a bunch of them.
This is a good podcast. Oh, have we given away the
The tickets?
yeah.
I don't know. Should I just leave that open to the end of the day and see who private messages me? And that's the
Peace, guys.
Nah,
See ya.
we should do
Thanks
it
for being on the
air.
cast, Keenan. All right,
Thanks a lot for being on the podcast.
fine.
That's funny.
Let's see if anybody else is listening. Okay. Second question. Second question to win the tickets. Question to win the tickets. Okay.
Dude. Yeah. These lights are pretty sweet.
I know somebody said we should call this Between Two Lamps to make fun of Zach Galifianakis' Between Two Ferns.
Yeah. I liked when he had Hillary Clinton on. That made me laugh.
Okay, second question.
The
to
Secret
win
Service
tickets.
almost tackled him.
Okay, second.
That was
question to win
hilarious.
tickets.
Because he came at her in like a gorilla suit or something.
Okay, second
yeah.
question to
Yeah.
win tickets. Name an animal that actively seeks drugs in nature. That actively.
I could think of one.
Well, you're on the fucking podcast, I guess.
Yeah, I know. I'm not answering.
High
I
nature.
disqualify myself.
Oh my god, that was terrible spelling. Thank you for red lines. Okay, second question to win the tickets. Name an animal that actively seeks to get high in nature. Right. I don't know who's left in the podcast or in the live chat. People can private, unless I. Boom. Apes. Linda, on what? Chimps. I should have been more clear. Are you gonna come? Are you gonna be able to make it to the show tonight? You better be able to. On what? I'm gonna start having to be more specific. Send a link. Charlie Sheen. Thank you, Jake.
There you go.
Wow. Okay, I had
Heyo.
a fucking meme the other day. It's Charlie Sheen sitting there and goes, "You can't fight destiny because then you have to fight the bouncers and all of the other strippers too."
That's hilarious.
Oh yeah. What do you mean? Send a link.
All right.
I want to know what apes get high on.
Oh, I thought Charlie Sheen was the winner.
What do apes get high? No, Charlie Sheen wasn't there. Linda, I asked for them to name an animal that actually seeks to get high, and she just posted apes and chimps, and I don't think it's a complete enough answer. I want to know what they actually get high on. I have some examples.
Oh, Charlie Sheen wasn't an answer. Oh crap! Because I would have gladly accepted that. He is an animal. Heyo. Heyo.
Couldn't find words to type. Yeah, people got lost trying to search back for the type. Ryan's now down here. Shit. Bighorn sheep lick lichen.
There you go. We have a winner.
Jesus.
Big dog sheep.
I'm wondering
Who
what kind
lick
of lichen.
lichen? Yeah. Do a Fox News fact check. Thorough, very lightly thorough.
These visuals are just
They're
super effective.
I can almost spell
Really?
lichen
Awesome.
as lunch.
Aspect without having to take like an 8-hour
What kind of high do they get from lichen? That's what I want to know.
yeah.
to psychedelics. It's just like sit down, watch like cool videos for 3 minutes, and get your fix.
Cat. Who just said cat? Was that Linda who said cat? Thinking.
Catnip.
All right. We
I am.
should,
There's bad. All right.
'cause
Let's close the podcast
Yeah.
out. I've heard saying narcotic high, so like crack. Okay, Ali is saying that bighorn sheep will get a narcotic high like crack. How do I get on the podcast? I'm chatting on YouTube. Linda is. I'm not understanding. Linda, I need you to still tell me what the apes get high on. All you said was apes and then cat. Is cat a drug like KAHT? Ali, you're already coming to the show. So, anyways, I think I'm going to close out and I'm going to solve the ticket giveaway here privately over the message. Thank you all for tuning in and have a good day. By the way, for anybody who was wondering about my earlier question, it is fucking that what we were smoking today was some clear mixed with some WCB2, the sequel. The sequel.
Nice.
WCB2, the sequel.
And it was delicious. Have a good one.
That was fun. How many people watched that? Wow, we got off.
start unplugging. Just
I'll take care of
Greg, do
that.
the electronics first.
Can I
We'll
just
do the
help
this.
move that up here?
And then, Jesus, that thing's pretty cool. Once we get the electronics done, we can deal with the furniture. And then I want to go and score another dab net and set up the second dab station for this evening, amongst other things. As soon as we get the electronics stuff out of the way.
Hang on. No.
Oh, this one doesn't unplug, eh?
Yeah, but besides that, like he said, I'll take care of the electric. No,
Okay.
don't do it. Don't do it.
I was just tightening up
Yeah,
so it doesn't,
sure.
paper for your English class that you just have to get an A on. Or a resume for your dream job. Or a message to your crush on a dating site.
That's a three.
The point is that you write important things each and every day.
With the lead
And whether you're an English professor or an English learner, we all could use a second pair of eyes to help us make sure we're always putting our best foot forward. Enter Grammarly, a writing app developed by some of the world's leading linguists. Grammarly helps you find and fix grammar, spelling, and punctuation errors wherever you write. Errors that other spelling and grammar checkers just can't catch. Grammarly also helps you improve word choice and style, making your writing clear and compelling all the time. Best of all, it's free. Better writing, better results. Click on the button to download
What the fuck is this? It's Lingerie Espresso.
Yo, the fuck, look at this guy. Car's loaded, we're waiting to fucking go. He's sitting here on his goddamn cell phone. We're up here fucking with this Crater Lake vodka. Salute.
I've been ready for fucking hours.
Oh yeah, after you dropped them off on the phone, yeah.
My name is Kai Tammy.
I out for peace.
Give it up for Miss Cat Tammy.
Yeah, make some noise for Emily Spiller.
Not only have I been the person greeting you at the front gate all this time, I'm gonna sing a little song for you as well. Hope you don't mind. What you see with Miss Cat Tammy.